Hi guys, tonight we step away from electric light, locked doors, soft mattresses, and the quiet confidence that morning will arrive more or less on schedule. You're going much farther back than any road, city, or written name can take you, into a world that existed around 100,000 years ago. The air is cold after sunset. A small fire breathes beside a shallow rock shelter, sending sparks into a sky crowded with stars. You hear insects in the grass, a distant animal calling beyond the darkness, and the soft movement of people settling close together on hides and dry plants. Nothing here is truly silent, and almost nothing is guaranteed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let us know in the comments where you are listening from, and what the local time is where you are tonight. Now, dim the lights and allow the modern room around you to soften. You stand near the edge of the fire, feeling heat on one side of your body and night air on the other. Your face warms, your back chills, smoke slips into your eyes, and its smell settles into your hair, skin, and the rough hide around your shoulders. It is not pleasant, exactly. But pleasantness is not the main purpose of anything here. Beyond the shelter lie open grasslands, scattered trees, low ridges, and a water source hidden somewhere in the darkness. Earlier, you follow the group over uneven ground, gathering edible plants and studying old tracks. There are no fields, planted crops, or storehouses. Agriculture is still many tens of thousands of years away. Every meal depends on movement, memory, cooperation, and luck. A mainstream fact about this period is that humans survived as mobile hunter-gatherers. Small communities moved according to water, weather, plant seasons, and animal migrations in Africa. Early Homo sapiens occupied many different environments in Europe and Western Asia. Neanderthals lived through cold and unstable conditions. Their lives were not identical, but none had permanent towns, metal tools, domestic livestock, or reliable food production. You might think the greatest loss is technology. No heater, no kettle, and not even a useful flashlight to investigate that rustling bush. The deeper loss is certainty. You do not know when food will appear again, whether an injury will heal, or whether the group must leave tomorrow. Plans exist, but they are written in clouds, footprints, animal behavior, remembered springs, and the experience of older people. Someone feeds a branch into the fire. It crackles and briefly brightens the rock wall. Faces emerge in the orange glow. A child curls against an adult. Another person turns a sharp stone flake between careful fingers. Someone farther back coughs from the smoke. Nobody has a private room. Nobody closes a door and decides that the rest of humanity can wait until breakfast. The first sacrifice is comfort. But comfort here means more than softness. It means being able to stop paying attention. You cannot stop paying attention. The wind changes slightly, bending smoke toward the shelter. A person near the entrance notices. No warning is spoken. Everyone has spent years learning the quiet grammar of weather. A cooler gust may mean nothing, or it may signal rain and falling temperatures. Dry fuel is limited if the fire dies during wet weather. Restarting it may require skill, patience, and carefully protected tinder. Fire offers warmth, light, protection, and a way to make some food easier to digest. It can harden wooden points and discourage predators, yet it demands constant work. Wood must be found, carried, broken, guarded, and kept dry. Smoke irritates the eyes. Sparks damage hides. Flames can reveal the camp. Even safety comes with maintenance, which is a very ancient inconvenience. One lesser-known detail from archaeology is that prehistoric people carried pieces of ochre, mineral earth that could be ground into red or yellow powder. It may have coloured skin, hides, tools, or meaningful objects. Imagine carrying a stone that is not food, fuel, or an obvious weapon when every extra weight matters. The choice suggests that colour, identity, memory, or ritual already held value. Researchers continue to question how fully symbolic behaviour had developed among human groups 100,000 years ago. Some finds suggest pigment use, personal ornaments, careful treatment of the dead, or exchange across long distances. Other evidence remains difficult to interpret. A pierced shell might be decoration, a practical object, or something whose meaning has disappeared. The past rarely labels its mysteries for us. You watch a hand bring a small red-stained stone from a skin bag. It passes quietly between two people. Perhaps it marks a family connection. Perhaps it has a practical use. Perhaps someone simply likes the colour. Survival has taken warmth, privacy, security, and predictability. But it has not erased curiosity. The night grows cooler. You lower yourself onto dry grass covered by animal hide. The ground remains firm and uneven. A stone presses against your hip. You shift and discover another. Prehistoric bedding, it seems, does not offer refunds. Bodies settle close because shared warmth matters. Infants stay near caregivers. Older people rest away from the worst drafts. Tools remain within reach. Someone stays alert near the entrance. A person exhausted from carrying meat or wood may sleep deeply while another watches the darkness. Beyond the firelight, the landscape belongs to animals with better night vision, sharper hearing, and fewer moral concerns about eating you. Still, this is not a world of constant panic. These people are not helpless strangers in nature. They know the terrain with an intimacy few modern travellers possess. They recognise tracks, droppings, broken stems, distant calls, and changes in wind. They know where water collects and which plants can be eaten. Knowledge is their map, weather forecast, medicine cabinet, and often their best defence. But knowledge cannot remove uncertainty. It can only make uncertainty manageable. You lie back and look toward the shelter roof. Firelight trembles across the stone, revealing cracks and stains that seem to move as the flames lower. The smell of cooked roots lingers near the ashes. A child murmurs in sleep. Outside, dry grass whispers against itself. You begin to understand what survival demanded before civilization. It was not one heroic sacrifice made in a dramatic moment. It was 1,000 small surrenders repeated each day. You gave up deep rest to listen. You gave up preference to eat. You gave up privacy to remain protected. You gave up possessions to move. You gave up certainty because certainty did not exist. And yet, as the fire sinks into red coals, you notice something gentle within the hardship. A hand pulls a hide over a sleeping child. Someone places another piece of wood beside the embers for later. An older person whispers, and another answers softly. The group is tired, smoky, uncomfortable, and alive. For tonight, that is enough. The fire does not go out all at once. It settles by degrees, losing its bright edges, drawing inward until the flames become a low red breathing beneath grey ash. You wake before dawn because the cold has found the narrow opening near your shoulder. It slips under the hide, touches the back of your neck, and reminds you that warmth in this world is never owned. It is borrowed. Around you, the shelter is dim and crowded. The air smells of smoke, damp earth, animal skin, and many people sleeping close together. Someone shifts nearby. A child gives a soft complaint and is pulled closer beneath a covering, near the entrance. A figure rises slowly, careful not to step on hands, feet, tools, or the precious bed of embers. You follow. Outside, the sky is dark blue. Frost shines on the grass. The firekeeper crouches over the ashes. A hand brushes away the pale surface. Beneath it, a small orange glow survives. Dry grass is added first, then thin twigs, then a careful breath. Smoke rises before flame. It enters your nose and throat. Your eyes water. Another breath follows. At last, a thread of fire curls upward. This simple moment can determine the shape of the day. A mainstream historical fact is that controlled fire was already ancient by 100,000 years ago. Earlier human species had used it long before you arrived in this landscape. Fire allowed people to cook some foods, warm themselves, light dark places, and reduce danger from certain animals. It also created a social centre where people could gather, work, rest, and exchange knowledge after sunset. But fire is not a magical shield. It requires fuel, dry tinder, attention, and suitable weather in a damp season. Every useful branch may be soaked in open grassland. Wood may be scarce in a windy place. Sparks can scatter into sleeping material under a shallow rock overhang. Smoke may collect until your eyes burn and your chest tightens. So you give up clean air for heat. You give up comfort for protection. You give up the freedom to wander away because someone must remain near the embers. The shelter itself is no palace. It is a shallow recess beneath stone, deep enough to break the wind but not deep enough to create true darkness. The roof slopes unevenly. Water has stained the walls. Small stones loosen underfoot. Dry plants have been spread where people sleep, with hides placed above them to soften the ground. That bedding matters more than it first appears. A lesser-known archaeological detail comes from sites where traces of ancient plant bedding have survived. At Border Cave in southern Africa, researchers found evidence that people used layers of grasses as sleeping surfaces, sometimes placing plants with insect-repelling properties beneath them, even in deep prehistory. Nobody enjoyed lying directly on cold dirt while insects explored the furniture. You kneel and lift one edge of the bedding. It is flattened, damp, and dusty. Small fragments of leaves cling to the hide. The material must be replaced when it rots, becomes infested, or absorbs too much moisture. Fresh grasses have to be cut and carried. Hides must be scraped, dried, softened, repaired, and protected from rain. There is no single moment when the shelter becomes finished. It is always being maintained. A crack in the windbreak needs filling. A hide tears. Rainwater creeps along the floor. Smoke changes direction. Fleas appear. A child spills food into the bedding. A stone placed carefully yesterday becomes, overnight, a personal enemy of the spine. You move toward the rear wall where several hides hang from wooden pegs and stone ledges. They are stiff in places, softer in others. Animal skins offer insulation, but they are heavy when wet and unpleasant when badly prepared. Making them useful requires long labour. Fat and tissue must be removed. The hide may be stretched, worked, smoked, or treated with substances available to the group. Researchers remain divided over how sophisticated clothing had become among different human populations around 100,000 years ago. Some groups almost certainly wrap themselves in hides or use simple coverings. The later invention of fitted garments required tools such as fine needles, which appear much more clearly in younger periods. Still, cold environments would have rewarded any method that trapped body heat. You wrap a hide more tightly around your shoulders. It smells strongly of smoke because smoke helps dry and preserve materials. It also discourages some insects. This is useful, although it means that everything you own smells as if it has spent the evening inside a chimney. Modern comfort often separates unpleasant things from useful ones. Heat arrives without smoke. Light appears without burning fuel. Walls stand without daily repair. Here, every advantage keeps its inconvenience attached. Warmth comes with soot. Shelter comes with crowding. Dryness comes with vigilance. The sun begins to rise, spreading pale light across the ground. People emerge one by one. Someone carries ashes away from the sleeping area. Another shakes a hide. 2 adults inspect a bundle of grass for dampness. A child gathers thin sticks near the rocks. No one needs to announce the morning work. Everyone knows that survival begins with maintenance. You join the search for fuel. The nearest fallen branches have already been collected, so you walk farther. You look for dead wood dry enough to burn. Some pieces crumble in your hand, others are too green. You gather what you can, balancing branches across your arms until they scratch your skin. Fuel is heavy. This is one reason people cannot simply build enormous fires every night. A larger fire demands more labor. More labor demands more calories. Calories depend on food. Food depends on time and movement. Even warmth has an invisible price measured in tired muscles and empty stomachs. When you return, smoke hangs beneath the shelter roof. Morning light catches it in soft bands. Someone has positioned stones around the fire. Another person warms food near the embers. The group looks almost peaceful from a distance. Up close, you see the work behind that peace, the patched hides, the cracked hands, the ash on faces, the damp bedding turned toward the sun, the fuel that will not last as long as anyone hopes. And yet, you feel the intelligence within the camp. The shelter is placed where stone blocks the prevailing wind. Sleeping spaces are arranged according to age, need, and warmth. Fuel is divided by size. Embers are preserved beneath ash. Materials are reused until they can serve no further purpose. Nothing is wasted because nothing is effortless. As the day brightens, you sit near the rekindled fire, heat reaches your fingers, smoke stings your eyes, and you shift slightly to avoid it. The smoke follows, as smoke has apparently done to human beings since the beginning of time. You almost smile. The warmth is imperfect. The shelter is cramped. The air is dirty. The work never ends. But for another morning, the fire lives, and because it lives, so do you. The morning fire warms your hands, but it does not erase the heaviness behind your eyes. You slept. Certainly. Though not in the way you understand sleep in the modern world. There was no sealed room, no locked window, no mattress holding your body in quiet darkness. Rest came in fragments. You drifted beneath the hide, woke when the wind changed, listened when someone coughed, and opened your eyes again when an animal called from beyond the shelter. Now the sun is higher, and the camp has begun to move. Yet part of you still feels caught in the night. That tiredness is not unusual here. Around 100,000 years ago, sleep was shaped by exposure. Human groups lived without solid walls, artificial lighting, or permanent protection from weather and animals, even when a cave, rock shelter, or carefully chosen camp offered some safety. Darkness remained active. Predators moved. Fires weakened. Children woke, rain arrived, wind shifted, injured people needed attention. Deep sleep had to compete with danger. You spend the day gathering dry branches, checking plant patches, and helping carry water. Every task feels slightly heavier because your body wants more rest than the world is willing to give. When evening returns, the group eats near the fire and prepares for another night. No one announces a formal schedule. There is no carved timetable stating who watches from moonrise until the stars reach a certain point. Instead, wakefulness moves through the group naturally. Some people fall asleep early. Others remain seated near the fire, shaping tools, repairing bindings, or speaking quietly. Later, those who rested first may wake and take their place. A mainstream historical fact is that human sleep patterns were probably influenced by social cooperation long before written history. Modern studies of present-day hunter-gatherer communities suggest that different individuals often sleep and wake at different times, leaving very few moments when everyone is asleep at once. These communities are not direct copies of prehistoric life, but they offer researchers useful clues about how shared vigilance may have worked. You notice this pattern as the fire settles. An older adult remains awake, turning a stick through the embers. A younger hunter lies down almost immediately, exhausted from walking. A mother rests while another person keeps a sleepy child nearby. Someone at the edge of the shelter listens toward the grassland. The group does not need a single guard standing rigidly in the darkness. Wakefulness is distributed. One person hears the wind. Another notices the fire. Someone else wakes because of pain, age, hunger, or a restless infant. Together, these broken rhythms create a thin net of awareness around the sleeping camp. It is not perfect, but perfection is a luxury that does not live here. You lie down near the wall, pulling the hide across your chest. The stone behind you still holds a little warmth from the day. Smoke drifts upward and gathers in the uneven roof. The camp grows quiet, though not silent. There is the small crack of cooling stone, the scrape of a tool being placed nearby, the wet sound of someone drinking, the sigh of a body turning on dry grass. Farther away, an animal gives a low call. Your eyes open. Nobody moves at first. The sound comes again, softer now. It may be distant. It may be harmless. It may be a warning from one animal to another. You cannot identify everything in the darkness, and uncertainty keeps your muscles tense. Researchers continue to debate how much early humans relied on fire to deter large predators. Flames, smoke, noise, and groups of alert people probably reduce certain risks, but no fire created complete safety. Lions, hyenas, leopards, and other carnivores shared many landscapes with humans. They were intelligent, observant, and sometimes interested in the same shelters, carcasses, and water sources. You listen until the sound disappears. Only then does your breathing slow. A curious lesser-known detail is that some prehistoric caves contain evidence of repeated occupation by both humans and carnivores at different times. A shelter that seems welcoming to you can also appeal to a hyena, bear, or big cat. Dry floors and protection from wind are popular features across species. Prehistoric real estate, unfortunately, had competitive tenants. The thought is almost amusing until a pebble shifts outside. The person near the entrance lifts their head. You wait. A small animal darts past the firelight and vanishes. The tension fades. Someone makes a quiet sound that may be laughter. Even now, fear does not always become panic. Experience teaches the group which noises matter and which are merely the night being busy. You close your eyes again. Sleep comes slowly. It carries you into a dream of walking beside water. But the dream breaks when cold rain begins tapping against the shelter entrance. At first, the sound is gentle. Then the drops become heavier, striking leaves, stone, skin coverings, and the dark earth outside. People wake by degrees. One person checks the fuel. Another moves tools farther from the damp edge. A hide is pulled across part of the opening, but this reduces airflow, and smoke begins collecting lower in the shelter. Your eyes sting. Someone coughs. Warmth and breathable air begin their familiar argument. You sit up to help shift the bedding away from a thin stream of water moving across the floor. This is what vigilance means here. It is rarely a dramatic confrontation. More often, it is noticing small changes before they become larger problems. A weak fire, a wet sleeping place, a missing tool, a child too quiet, a wind carrying an unfamiliar smell. Modern life hides many of these tasks inside buildings: alarms, locks, and machines. You can sleep while a roof handles rain, a thermostat manages temperature, and a refrigerator protects food. Here, people themselves are the alarm system, weather seal, and emergency service. The rain passes before dawn, cold air follows it. You lie down again, though only a little darkness remains. Your body aches from interrupted rest. Beside you, someone is already awake, feeding thin sticks into the fire. Another person sleeps deeply, finally receiving the rest denied earlier. You begin to understand that sleep is not private in this world. It is shared and negotiated. You rest because another person listens. Later, they rest because you remain awake. That exchange costs everyone something. It costs long dreams, quiet mornings, and the freedom to become completely unaware. But as pale light returns to the entrance, you see the result. The fire survived. The bedding stayed mostly dry. The tools remain close. The children are safe. The group stirs together. You have not slept well. You have survived the night. Here, those two things are often enough. By the time the light has fully entered the shelter, everyone is awake, and almost everyone knows how badly everyone else slept. There is no polite illusion here. The child who cried in the night is still rubbing tired eyes. The older man who coughed near the fire looks pale. Two adults who argued quietly before dawn now sit on opposite sides of the ashes, pretending to be very interested in separate pieces of wood. Someone has discovered that a strip of dried food is missing, and three people are already glancing toward the same boy. Privacy, you begin to understand, is not merely rare, it is almost impossible. The shelter holds bodies, tools, smoke, bedding, food, irritation, affection, and every small human habit in one shared space. You know who snores, you know who wakes hungry, you know whose wound smells wrong, you know when someone is frightened, angry, jealous, ill, or simply tired of hearing another person chew. Around 100,000 years ago, humans lived in relatively small mobile groups. Exact group sizes varied, and people may have gathered into larger communities at certain seasons. But daily survival depended on close cooperation among individuals who knew one another intimately. There were no apartment walls, private bedrooms, or quiet offices. Social life unfolded in public because nearly all life unfolded in public. You sit near the fire while someone divides the morning food. Every hand movement is observed. A portion goes to the child first, another goes to an injured adult. Several people receive smaller pieces. No written rule explains why. Yet everyone notices the distribution. Food is nourishment, but it is also trust. A person who repeatedly hides more than their share may damage relationships worth more than one meal. This is one reason solitude can be expensive. You might walk away from the shelter to escape an argument, but beyond the camp you lose warmth, watchful eyes, and immediate help. You may find a quiet place beside the rocks, yet a twisted ankle there becomes more dangerous. You may wish to eat alone, but carrying food away can look suspicious. Even private sadness must remain close enough to hear when the group calls. Modern people often complain that family members know too much about their business. Here, the group knows almost all of it before breakfast. You move outside with several others to clean the sleeping area. Hides are shaken, dry grass is pulled apart, small bones and food scraps are carried away. Bedding overlaps. Personal objects lie only an arm's length apart. A stone tool belonging to one person has somehow ended beneath another person's hide. Nobody has a locked chest. Possessions are few, but that does not make them meaningless. A carefully shaped point, a useful scraper, a shell ornament, or a hide bag may carry personal history. yet such items remain visible and often usable by others. Ownership exists, but it must live beside need. A lesser-known archaeological clue comes from the way ancient living floors preserve patterns. Hearths, stone flakes, animal remains, and sleeping areas can sometimes reveal how people organize shared space. Researchers study these distributions to ask whether certain activities happened around particular fires or whether a shelter contained several small social units. The evidence is incomplete. A scatter of stone fragments cannot tell you who was annoyed with whom, who preferred the warm side of the fire, or who always left tools in inconvenient places. Archaeology is powerful, but it has yet to identify the first person accused of taking someone else's sleeping spot. You carry a bundle of used grass away from camp. Behind you, 2 children follow an adult gathering fresh bedding. They imitate movements and occasionally become distracted by insects. Learning happens openly. Children watch tool making, food preparation, wound care, arguments, reconciliation, and the daily negotiation of space. A young person learns not only by being taught, but by being present. Scholars remain divided on how closely prehistoric social organization resembled that of recent hunter-gatherer communities. Modern groups have their own histories and cannot be treated as frozen images of the distant past. Still, observations of food sharing, cooperative childcare, flexible residence, and social conflict provide useful possibilities when interpreted carefully alongside archaeological evidence. Back at the shelter, the sick man lies near the wall. His condition cannot be concealed. Everyone hears his breathing, someone touches his forehead, another checks the swelling near his leg. Care is also public. Illness changes the work of the entire camp because someone must bring water, adjust bedding, share food, and decide whether movement should be delayed. The loss of privacy becomes a kind of protection. There is no chance to quietly decline while nobody notices. A person who stops eating is seen. A wound that worsens is smelled. A child who becomes unusually still draws attention. You sit beside the man and hold a skin container while he drinks. He looks embarrassed by the help, or perhaps merely irritated by being watched. Human dignity is already present, but it must adapt to a world where independence can vanish in a single fall. Later, the adults who argue before dawn begin speaking again. Their voices remain low. Yet everyone nearby listens without appearing to listen. Conflict threatens more than comfort. A serious break within a small group can weaken hunting, gathering, childcare, defense, and travel. There are no courts, written contracts, or professional mediators. Repair depends on reputation, persuasion, kinship, humor, restraint, and the willingness of others to intervene. Someone makes a quiet joke. A few people smile. The tension eases slightly. This too is survival. You may imagine prehistoric life as a struggle between humans and nature. But much of survival depends on humans managing one another. Hunger shortens tempers. Fatigue makes small habits unbearable. Unequal effort causes resentment. Affection creates alliances. Kindness repairs what irritation damages. The group offers safety, but it also demands that you remain visible. You cannot reinvent yourself easily, and your mistakes are remembered. Your strengths are remembered too. The person who once found water during a dry season may be trusted years later. The person who abandoned a difficult task may need a long time to restore confidence. As evening returns, fresh grass lies beneath the hides. People settle once more around the fire. You find a place between 2 sleeping bodies, close enough to feel their warmth. Someone's foot brushes your ankle. A child whispers nearby. Across the flames, the sick man is still breathing steadily. There is no privacy. There is also no complete loneliness in the darkness. Those 2 truths rest beside each other. You give up the right to disappear, to hide every weakness, and to keep every thought beyond the reach of others. In return, someone notices when you shiver, someone shares the last warm hide, someone wakes when your breathing changes. The price of belonging's constant exposure. The gift of belonging is that, for another night, you do not face the dark alone. Morning begins with hunger. It is not a dramatic hunger yet. It is a quiet hollowness beneath the ribs, the kind that makes every smell sharper and every conversation about food slightly more serious. The fire has been stirred back to life, but little waits beside it. A few roots remain from yesterday. Several strips of dried meat hang near the rear of the shelter, though everyone knows they cannot be eaten freely. They are insurance against a worse day. You watch an older woman choose one small piece, divide it, and pass the fragments among the children. No one asks what they would prefer. Preference is one of the first luxuries the landscape removes. Around 100,000 years ago, humans depended on wild foods that change with season, location, rainfall, and chance. A mainstream historical fact is that hunter-gatherer diets were usually broad and flexible, rather than built around a single food. People collected plants, fruits, nuts, seeds, roots, shellfish, eggs, insects, honey, and small animals, while also hunting or scavenging larger game when possible. The balance differed by place. A group near the coast might rely heavily on shellfish and fish. People in dry grasslands might depend more on underground plant foods and animals gathered near water, in wooded areas. Nuts and fruits could become important during short seasons of abundance. You eat what the land offers, more importantly, you eat what skilled people know how to find. Several members of the group leave camp carrying digging sticks, hide bags, stone flakes, and simple containers. You go with them. The morning air is cool, and damp soil darkens the ground beneath scattered shrubs. Birds call from somewhere beyond the ridge. The smell of wet grass mixes with old smoke clinging to your skin. You walk slowly, watching the others. An ordinary-looking plant causes the group to stop. One person kneels and pushes a digging stick into the ground beside its stem. The soil is loosened carefully. Beneath the surface lies a thick underground storage organ, firm with moisture and energy. It takes work to reach. The digging stick presses into your palm. Soil packs beneath your nails. Small stones resist every movement. When the root finally comes free, it is coated in mud and looks less like a meal than something a modern person might throw away while cleaning the garden. Here, it is valuable. Underground foods can survive dry seasons and remain hidden from many animals, yet some are fibrous, bitter, or mildly toxic unless processed correctly. They may need pounding, soaking, roasting, or repeated heating. Knowledge turns them from dangerous objects into dinner. That knowledge is not written down. You learn by watching hands. You learn which leaves belong to edible roots, where certain plants grow after rain, and how the ground changes when something useful lies beneath it. A mistake may cause sickness and weaken the group. Researchers continue to question how much cooking changed human diets before and during the emergence of modern Homo sapiens. Fire clearly made many foods softer, safer, and easier to digest. But archaeological traces of plant preparation are often fragile. Burned seeds and microscopic residues survive only in favourable conditions, leaving much of the daily menu invisible. Stone tools preserve more readily than boiled roots. As a result, the distant past can look more meat-heavy than it truly was. A small piece of bone may survive for thousands of centuries. A basket of berries disappears without ceremony. You continue walking until the group reaches a patch of low vegetation buzzing with insects. Someone overturns a piece of bark and quickly gathers pale grubs into a folded leaf. Another person finds ants and collects their eggs. You hesitate only for a moment. This is food. A quirky truth about human diets is that insects have been eaten across many cultures and provide concentrated fat and protein in deep prehistory. Termites, caterpillars, beetle larvae, and other small creatures may have offered dependable nutrition when larger animals were difficult to catch. They require no heroic chase, although they do require accepting that lunch may have legs. You place one roasted grub in your mouth later beside a small fire. It is soft, oily, and not entirely unpleasant. You decide not to think about it. Modern eating often begins with desire. You choose a cuisine, open a menu, reject ingredients, and search for something matching your mood. Here, eating begins with availability. The question is not what you desire, but what can be found, carried, prepared, and shared before darkness. By midday, your bag holds roots, several handfuls of small fruits, insects wrapped in leaves, and a few eggs taken from a ground nest. None of it feels like enough. Then you reach the water. The stream is shallow and edged with mud. Tracks cover the bank. Antelope have passed here. Birds stand in the reeds. Small creatures move beneath the surface. People spread out. One person feels beneath stones for shellfish. Another uses a sharpened stick near the water's edge. Children search for eggs, crabs, and edible plants. The work is patient, almost quiet. There is no single grand provider. Food accumulates through many hands and many small successes. A shell opens with a stone. Inside is a mouthful. Another shell follows, then another. You begin to see how survival is built, not from one glorious hunt, but from dozens of modest acts. A root found beneath hard soil, a nest discovered in grass, a lizard caught near warm stone, a cluster of fruit remembered from the previous season. When hunters return without meat, these foods matter even more. That evening, the group gathers near the fire. The roots are placed among hot stones and covered with ash. Eggs are cooked carefully. Shellfish open in the heat. The insects roast on a flat stone. The smell is earthy, smoky, slightly sweet, and unfamiliar. Food is divided by need, custom, and contribution. The children receive soft pieces. The sick man is given broth made by warming water with heated stones and adding crushed plant material. Adults chew slowly. There is not much. You notice how no one rushes. Eating too quickly only makes the meal shorter. You chew the roasted root. It is tough at the edges and sweet in the center. Smoke has entered every bite. Grit presses between your teeth. Still, warmth spreads into your body, and hunger retreats. For tonight, this is enough. You have surrendered the expectation that food should please you. You've given up regular meals, familiar flavors, and the comforting certainty that breakfast will resemble yesterday's breakfast. In return, you have learned to notice abundance where a less knowledgeable person might see nothing. The dark ground holds roots. The rotting wood holds larvae. The stream holds shells. The branches hold eggs. The season offers what it can, and you accept the bargain. Beside the fire, someone passes you the last small piece of cooked root. You break it in half and hand part to the child nearest you. The gesture is automatic now. Hunger is personal. Survival is shared. The next morning, there is almost nothing left beside the fire. A few cracked shells lie near the ashes. One roasted root has been saved for the youngest child. The strips of dried meat still hang at the back of the shelter, but there are fewer now, and everyone knows they cannot last many more days. Hunger has changed overnight. Yesterday it was a hollow feeling. Today it has weight. You feel it when you stand. Your legs seem slower. Your mouth is dry, although you have already drunk water. The smell of old smoke makes your stomach tighten because your body remembers meals cooked over the same fire. No one complains loudly. That would waste energy and tell everyone something they already know. Around 100,000 years ago, food shortages were not unusual interruptions. They were part of the basic rhythm of life. Wild resources could be abundant for a time, then disappear after drought, cold, migration, flooding, or overuse. Hunter-gatherers survived by moving, sharing, storing limited foods, and relying on detailed knowledge of many possible resources. There was no harvest calendar promising grain in a few months. There was only observation. The clouds had changed. The stream was lower. The animals had shifted east. The fruiting trees near the ridge had already been stripped. You leave camp with several hunters before the sun rises fully. Their weapons are simple but carefully made. Wooden spears carry sharpened tips, and some are fitted with stone points held by bindings and adhesive. Each tool represents hours of searching, shaping, testing, and repair. A spear is valuable. The body carrying it is even more valuable. The group follows tracks across damp soil near the stream. The prints belong to medium-sized grazing animals. They are not fresh, but they are recent enough to encourage movement. You walk quietly. Dry grass brushes your legs. Small stones shift beneath your feet. The morning begins cool, but heat gathers quickly after sunrise. Your hunger becomes less noticeable as concentration takes over. Tracking is not guesswork. The people around you read details that seem invisible at first. A bent stem, a fresh dropping, the depth of a hoof print, a disturbed patch of dust. They know whether an animal walked calmly or moved quickly. They can estimate direction, number, and sometimes age. You try to imitate them, but your eyes keep losing the trail. One hunter points toward a narrow path between thorny shrubs. You follow. Hours pass. The group reaches a rise and pauses far below. Several animals graze near scattered trees. Everyone lowers their body. There is no excitement, only attention. A failed approach will cost time and calories. A reckless one may cost blood. People move apart according to a plan that needs few words. Wind direction matters. Cover matters. The animals must be approached without allowing human scent to travel ahead. You circle slowly. Your stomach aches. The irony is almost insulting. You need food in order to obtain food. And obtaining food requires energy you no longer have. This basic problem shaped human survival for countless generations. Hunting large animals could provide substantial meat, fat, hide, bone, and sinew. But it was uncertain and dangerous. Plant gathering, shellfish collecting, trapping, scavenging, and hunting smaller creatures often offered more dependable returns. Researchers have long discussed how much big game hunting contributed to the diets of early humans in different regions. Some sites contain impressive animal remains, while others show broad use of coastal foods, plants, and small prey. The safest conclusion is that humans survive through flexibility rather than loyalty to one method. The animals below lift their heads. Someone has moved too quickly. For a heartbeat, everything is still. Then the herd runs. Hooves strike the ground in a rolling rhythm. Dust rises behind them. The hunters move. But the distance widens too fast. One spear is thrown and falls short. Another animal changes direction before anyone can close in. Within moments, the opportunity is gone. No one shouts. There's only the sound of breathing and the soft settling of dust. You wait for anger, but what arrives is calculation. How much daylight remains? Where is the nearest water? Could the herd be followed? Is there another route back? Failed hunts are not unusual. Success rates among traditional hunters vary widely according to prey, environment, technology, and experience. One missed chance does not mean incompetence. It means the animals also wish to remain alive, a preference they defend with admirable commitment. The group follows for a while, then stops. Continuing would carry everyone too far from camp. This decision is difficult because turning back means returning without meat. Yet stubborn pursuit can waste more energy than it gains. Survival requires knowing when desire has become dangerous. You begin the long walk home. On the way, the group checks traps placed earlier near animal paths. The first is empty. The second has been disturbed but contains nothing. At the third, a small animal has been caught. It will not feed everyone well. It will help. One person kills it quickly and carries it by the hind legs. No celebration follows. The result is measured against the number of mouths waiting. A lesser-known detail of ancient subsistence is that small prey may have played a larger role than dramatic hunting scenes suggest. Tortoises, rabbits, birds, rodents, shellfish, and reptiles often left evidence in archaeological sites. These creatures could be gathered or trapped by people who might not take part in dangerous large animal hunts, widening the community's food supply. Near the camp, you meet two gatherers returning with a small bag of bitter fruits and several roots. Their faces reveal the same calculation as yours. Not enough, but not nothing. Evening arrives with a meal so small that every portion seems almost symbolic. The trapped animal is cooked and divided. Fat clings to a few bones. The roots are roasted. The bitter fruits are crushed and mixed with water. The children eat first. The sick man receives a little soft meat. Several adults take only roots. You receive a piece no larger than 2 fingers. You chew slowly. The meat is smoky, tough, and precious. You crack a small bone with a stone and draw out the soft marrow. It coats your tongue with fat, giving more energy than the size of the portion suggests. Marrow was an important resource because it remained inside bones after much of the flesh had been removed. Archaeologists often find broken animal bones bearing marks from stone tools and deliberate smashing. These traces show how thoroughly people extracted nutrition from a carcass. Nothing useful is left casually behind. When the meal ends, hunger remains. It sits quietly with the group. No one knows whether tomorrow will bring a successful hunt, a patch of food, or another day of walking. The dried meat at the rear of the shelter may need to be opened. That decision will reduce the future in order to support the present. You lie down as darkness fills the entrance. Your stomach tightens, then slowly settles. Nearby, someone whispers about moving camp. The water is lower. Tracks suggest game has shifted. Plants near the shelter are becoming harder to find. Hunger is beginning to push the group across the landscape. This is what scarcity does. It narrows choices. It makes patience harder. It tests fairness. It asks whether food should be saved, eaten, shared, or carried. You close your eyes and listen to the fire. Survival is not always defeating danger. Sometimes it is accepting a smaller portion. Sometimes it is turning back from an impossible hunt. Sometimes it is going to sleep hungry so that a child does not have to. The decision to leave is made before sunrise. No one gathers the group for a formal announcement. There is no speech beside the fire, no dramatic pointing toward the horizon. Instead, you notice the signs one by one. The dried meat is taken down. Stone tools are inspected. Hides are folded. A carrying sling is repaired with sinew. The bedding is pulled apart, and only the best material is saved. By the time pale light reaches the shelter entrance, everyone understands that this place is no longer home. Perhaps it never truly was. Around 100,000 years ago, most human communities survived through mobility. They moved when water became scarce, when edible plants stopped producing, when animal herds shifted, or when seasonal weather made a familiar place less useful. Some camps may have been occupied repeatedly, perhaps for generations, but permanent settlement was still far in the future. To survive, you must be able to leave, and to leave, you must decide what deserves to come with you. You kneel beside the sleeping place where you have spent several nights. The hide beneath you is warm from your body. Beside it lies a smooth stone you picked up near the stream. It fits comfortably in your hand. It has no sharp edge, no obvious practical purpose, but you have carried it since the first day because its pale surface catches firelight beautifully. Now you weigh it against the journey. Every object has a cost. A stone tool costs little when held alone. 10 stone tools pull at the shoulder. A hide keeps you warm but becomes exhausting when wet. Wood for fire is valuable but usually too heavy to transport far. Water must be carried where the land is dry. Food is essential, yet food also adds weight. You place the smooth stone on the ground. The loss seems foolishly small. Still, you look back at it. Mobility demands a kind of discipline modern life rarely requires. Today, people fill rooms, cupboards, attics, garages, and digital folders with things they may never use. Here, possession must justify itself with almost embarrassing honesty. Can it cut? Can it carry? Can it warm? Can it help create fire? Can it feed someone? Can it hold meaning strong enough to deserve the weight? The group begins sorting tools near the ashes. The best stone points are wrapped carefully. Scrapers are placed in hide bags. Several unfinished pieces of stone are left behind because suitable raw material may be found later. Broken tools are examined one last time. Some can be reshaped into smaller cutting edges. Others have reached the end of their usefulness. Archaeological sites often contain large numbers of stone flakes and discarded pieces. These remains reveal not only tool-making skill but decisions about transport. Fine stone from distant sources suggests that people sometimes carried valuable material across considerable distances or exchanged it between groups. A useful stone could travel farther than the person who first shaped it. Experts continue to discuss how extensive such exchange networks were during this period. Some unusual materials appear far from their geological sources, which may indicate direct travel, gift exchange, or repeated movement between neighbouring communities. The evidence hints at connected landscapes, though the exact routes and relationships remain uncertain. You pick up a sharp flake and turn it toward the light. Its edge is still good. It joins the bundle. Nearby, a woman sorts several shells, each pierced near one end. They're too small to serve as containers and too delicate to be tools. She holds them in her palm for a long moment, then threads them onto a cord and ties the cord around her wrist. They will come. This is not the most efficient choice, but efficiency is not the only measure of human life. Personal ornaments from African sites show that early Homo sapiens sometimes carried pierced shells or other objects that may have marked identity, relationships, status, or memory. A tiny shell weighs very little, yet its survival in the archaeological record says something powerful. Even people who owned almost nothing still chose to carry beauty. Your pale stone would have been heavier. You try not to resent the shells. The bedding is more difficult. Fresh grass can be gathered elsewhere, so most of it is burned or scattered. Hides are kept, though each must be rolled tightly. One damaged skin is left behind because repairing it would take more effort than replacing it later. A child protests. The hide may have been theirs. Perhaps they slept beneath it since infancy. An adult speaks softly, but the decision does not change. Sentiment must negotiate with muscle, distance, and available food. The child touches the hide once before walking away. You understand. Giving up possessions does not mean people feel no attachment. It means attachment cannot always win. At the edge of camp, several wooden poles lean against the rock. Some have served as spears. Others supported hides or carried bundles. The strongest are selected. The rest remain where they stand. Wood rarely survives in ancient sites, which is one reason prehistoric life can appear dominated by stone. In reality, much of the everyday toolkit was probably made from wood, fiber, bark, skin, bone, and other materials that usually decay, digging sticks, shafts, containers, cords, mats, and carrying devices may have surrounded people even when almost no trace remains. The past has preserved the hardest objects, not necessarily the most common ones. By mid-morning, each person carries something. Adults bear rolled hides, tools, water, food, and infants. Older children carry lighter bundles. The injured man has improved, but he still walks slowly and uses a staff. His load has been divided among others. You lift a hide sling across your shoulder. Inside are stone flakes, dried meat, a bundle of tinder, and 2 small bones used for delicate work. The weight seems manageable at first. Then the group begins walking. The shelter recedes behind you. No one looks back immediately. The path crosses rough ground where low shrubs catch at your legs. Heat gathers beneath the hide around your shoulders. The sling rubs against your collarbone. After an hour, every item feels heavier than it did at dawn. A small object becomes an argument with gravity. You begin imagining what could be discarded. One stone flake, a strip of hide, the tinder. Nothing seems unnecessary now. The strange truth is that carrying too much can threaten survival, but carrying too little can do the same. Leave behind the wrong tool, and future food may be harder to process. Abandon warm hides, and a cold night becomes dangerous. Refuse sentimental objects, and perhaps you lose something that binds people together. The ideal load is not simply light, it is enough. At midday, the group rests beneath sparse shade. Bundles fall to the ground with dull thumps. Shoulders are rubbed. Water is shared in small amounts. Someone checks the wrapped embers carried in a bark-lined container, protected beneath ash and decayed wood. Transporting live fire is an old and practical trick, instead of creating flame from the beginning at every new camp. People could preserve a slow-burning coal or smouldering material during travel. It required care, and success was never guaranteed. But a surviving ember could save precious time. The container gives off a faint thread of smoke. Everyone notices. The fire has travelled with you. You rise again and continue. By late afternoon, the abandoned shelter is no longer visible. The objects left there now belong to weather, insects, animals, and perhaps another human group that may pass through later. Your smooth stone remains beside the cold sleeping place. You imagine it catching the evening light. Then you adjust the load on your shoulder and keep walking. Survival asks you to release what cannot support the journey. It teaches you that ownership is temporary, that home can be folded into a hide, and that memory must often travel without the object that created it. You have less than you carried this morning, yet the group moves faster. Ahead, someone has seen trees gathering along a distant watercourse. The pace changes slightly. Hope enters the line of walking bodies. Behind you lies everything that was too heavy, too damaged, or no longer necessary. Ahead lies another fire, another sleeping place, and another temporary world. The line of travellers reaches the distant trees near sunset. From far away, the place looked promising. Dark foliage gathered along a shallow watercourse, and a low wall of stone offered shelter from the wind. Up close, the landscape is less generous. The water runs slowly between muddy banks. Animal tracks cover the edges. Insects rise in clouds whenever someone steps through the grass. Still, there is water, there is shade, there's enough dry ground for a fire, for tonight. That is sufficient. Bundles are lowered with grateful sounds. The wrapped ember has survived the journey, glowing faintly beneath its covering. Dry fibres are placed around it. Someone kneels, breathes gently, and soon a small flame appears. You watch smoke rise into unfamiliar branches. The old shelter is gone from sight. yet your body still expects its shape. You remember where the wall curved behind your sleeping place. You remember the crack near the entrance where dawn first appeared. You remember the smooth stone you left beside the cold bedding. This new place has no memories yet. It is only ground. Human communities living 100,000 years ago moved through landscapes that were constantly changing. Rainfall shifted, rivers rose or disappeared, herds followed fresh grazing, fruit ripened briefly and then vanished. A place that supported life during one season could become dangerous or empty during another. The larger climate of the late Pleistocene was unstable. Temperatures and rainfall patterns changed over long periods, reshaping coastlines, grasslands, forests, and deserts. People did not experience these changes as lines on a scientific graph. They experienced them as drying springs, unfamiliar plants, missing animals, stronger winds, and journeys that had to begin earlier each year. You crouch beside the stream and cup water in your hands. It tastes of mud and leaves. Before drinking deeply, others inspect the bank. Fresh prints reveal that many animals use this place. That is encouraging because animals mean possible food. It is also dangerous because predators may visit the same water. Every useful place attracts competition. The group begins testing the surroundings. Several people walk upstream, others search for edible plants, a few gather fuel, someone examines the rock wall for signs of previous occupation. There are old ashes near a shallow recess and scattered stone flakes partly buried in dirt. Humans have been here before. Perhaps they were members of this group during an earlier season. Perhaps they belonged to strangers. The flakes offer no names, only the quiet evidence of hands striking stone. Repeated occupation of favourable sites is common in the archaeological record. Caves, rock shelters, springs, and river crossings could draw human groups again and again over thousands of years. Layers of ash, tools, and animal bone accumulated as people returned to places that offered reliable resources. A campsite could therefore be familiar without being permanent. You may know where morning light enters, where rain collects, and where the best stone lies, yet still abandon the place when the season demands it. The new camp is arranged before darkness. Hides are stretched near the stone wall. Fresh grass is collected for bedding. Tools are placed close to the fire. The injured man is given a protected space away from the damp bank. Children are warned not to wander toward the reeds. The work resembles what happened at the old shelter. That similarity is comforting. Home in this world is not defined only by a particular cave or tree. It can be recreated through repeated actions. Fire at the center, bedding near the wall, water containers close by, tools within reach, familiar bodies settling into familiar positions. Home is a pattern carried in memory, yet the loss of place still matters. You notice it the following morning when several people begin exploring beyond the watercourse. At the previous shelter, they knew every useful path. Here, each step requires caution. A patch of green may contain food or poison. A narrow trail may lead toward game or a predator's resting place. Knowledge must be rebuilt. One older woman studies the trees and touches the bark. She recognizes the species, but the fruit is not ready. Another person digs near a plant and finds only a thin root. Tracks suggest animals passed during the night, though no one knows where they went afterward. Leaving familiar territory means surrendering efficiency. At the old camp, you knew where to gather dry wood. You knew which stones stayed warm after sunset. You knew how far the stream lay from the shelter. Here, time is spent learning what was once automatic. Researchers still disagree about the scale and frequency of prehistoric movement. Some groups may have followed wide seasonal circuits, while others remained within smaller territories rich in resources. Coastal communities, inland hunters, and people living near dependable rivers likely developed different patterns. Mobility was not one universal march across endless distance. It was a flexible response to local conditions. The group may remain here for days, perhaps weeks. Perhaps the water will fail tomorrow. No one can promise. A curious detail from ancient sites is that people sometimes transported stone over distances even when local material was available. The imported stone may have been sharper, more durable, visually distinctive, or socially meaningful. Such choices suggest that landscapes were not merely collections of resources. Certain places and materials may have carried memory and identity. You see this when a toolmaker unwraps a dark stone core brought from the previous region. Local stone lies nearby, but this piece is finer. Each flake removed from it carries part of another landscape into the new camp. The toolmaker works slowly. Tap, turn, tap again. Sharp flakes fall onto unfamiliar soil for a moment. The old place returns through sound. By afternoon, a hunting party has found signs of game farther east. Gatherers discover edible tubers near a patch of damp ground. Children locate small shellfish in the stream. The new landscape begins to offer itself in fragments. Confidence grows, not quickly, but enough. As evening approaches, clouds gather over the trees. Wind presses through the leaves with a sound different from the grasslands behind you. Someone reinforces the hide covering near the rock wall. Another moves fuel beneath shelter. You sit beside the fire and watch people settle. The child who mourned the abandoned hide now sleeps beneath another. The injured man leans against the stone. The shell ornaments carried from the old camp catch the firelight. Familiar faces make the strange place less strange. You begin to understand why leaving home was both ordinary and painful. Survival required movement, but memory resisted it. A spring might hold the story of a birth. A rock shelter might be associated with an elder who died. A tree might mark the place where food was found during a desperate season. Walking away did not erase these connections. It simply placed distance between people and the landscapes that shaped them. There were no maps to preserve every route. Memory lived in stories, gestures, landmarks, and the knowledge of experienced travelers. Lose the person who remembered a distant water source, and part of the landscape could disappear with them. The fire lowers. Rain begins tapping against leaves. You lie on fresh grass that still smells green. The ground feels unfamiliar beneath your back. The darkness beyond the flames contains paths you have not walked and sounds you do not yet understand. Still, someone beside you breathes steadily. A hand places more wood near the embers. Tomorrow, you will learn the stream, the trees, the animal trails, and the safe route through the reeds. You gave up the old shelter because remaining there meant hunger. You gave up familiarity because the land had changed. And now, slowly, through work and repetition, this strange place begins to hold you, not forever. Nothing here promises forever, only long enough to survive. By the third morning at the new camp, the stream no longer feels entirely unfamiliar. You know where the bank is firm enough to stand. You know which patch of reeds conceals sharp stones beneath the water. You know that birds gather in the taller trees shortly before sunrise, and that the mud near the eastern bend holds fresh hoof prints after dark. Yet knowing the land is not the same as surviving in it alone. That lesson becomes clear when the group divides its work. Several hunters prepare to follow the animal trail discovered beyond the trees. Gatherers plan to search the damp ground for tubers. 2 adults remain with the injured man, the youngest children, and the fire. An older woman checks stone tools and begins repairing a hide container. Everyone has a task, though not every task looks equally impressive. You go with those heading toward the tuber patch. At first, the work appears simple. Find the plants, loosen the soil, lift the roots, and carry them home. Then you remember how much knowledge hides inside each step. One person identifies the correct leaves, another knows where to dig without breaking the edible portion. Someone else can tell which roots need long cooking and which can be eaten after brief roasting. Your hands provide strength, their memories provide food. Human survival during the Middle Stone Age depended heavily on cooperation. Archaeological evidence from tools, food remains, hearths, and repeated camps suggest that early Homo sapiens lived within social groups where labour, information, and resources were shared. A single person might be skilled, but no one could hunt, gather, protect children, maintain fire, care for injuries, remember every water source, and make every necessary tool at once. Independence sounds admirable until the day becomes too long. You push the digging stick into wet soil. The earth resists, then gives way. Beside you, a child gathers loose roots into a hide bag. Farther along the patch, an older woman works more slowly but finds the largest plants. Her knees are stiff, her eyes are sharp. She points to a cluster you nearly overlooked. You begin digging there and uncover enough food to fill both hands. Age has reduced her speed, but it has increased the number of meals hidden inside the landscape. This is one reason older people matter so much in small communities. They may carry knowledge of distant seasons, rare droughts, dangerous plants, old migration routes, family relationships, and unusual animal behavior. A younger adult can walk farther in a day, but an elder may know where to walk when ordinary places fail. Some researchers have proposed that longer adult lifespans strengthened human culture by allowing more knowledge to pass between generations. Others caution that prehistoric age estimates are difficult and that the importance of elders likely varied widely. What remains clear is that survival knowledge becomes more valuable when conditions change, and conditions always change. By midday, the hide bags are heavy. The child grows tired and begins dragging one foot. Without discussion, an adult takes part of the load. Another person carries the digging sticks. You lift the child for a short distance, feeling warm arms tighten around your neck. Your pace slows. The group could move faster without children, injured people, or elders. It would also have no future, less memory, and fewer hands tomorrow. Cooperation is not always efficient in the immediate moment. Sometimes it means carrying someone who cannot repay the effort today. Sometimes it means sharing food with a toolmaker who gathered nothing. Sometimes it means remaining near camp while others return with meat and receive more attention. The work of survival is not divided into heroes and bystanders. Back at the stream, the hunters have not returned. Smoke rises from the camp through the branches. Someone near the fire sees you approaching and comes to help unload the roots. The injured man is sitting upright now. He has spent the morning scraping a wooden shaft smooth with a stone tool. His leg still prevents long travel, but his hands remain useful. Nearby, one caregiver crushes plant material against a flat stone. Another keeps a toddler away from the flames. Two children sort dry twigs by size. The scene is quiet, ordinary, and carefully coordinated. A lesser-known point about hunter-gatherer life is that childcare often extends beyond parents. Anthropologists use the term alloparenting for care given by siblings, grandparents, relatives, or other group members. Modern communities differ, and they cannot be treated as exact prehistoric models. But shared childcare may have allowed human mothers to gather food, recover, and raise children whose long development required years of support. A human child remains dependent for an inconveniently long time. This is wonderful for learning and rather demanding for everyone nearby. You watch an older boy distract a toddler with a smooth shell while two adults prepare food. He is not merely playing, he is participating in the survival of the camp. The hunters return in late afternoon. You hear them before you see them. Branches move beyond the stream. followed by low voices and the soft thud of something heavy being carried. They have not taken a large animal, but they bring several smaller creatures and a portion of meat scavenged from a carcass, abandoned by predators. The smell reaches camp quickly. People gather, but no one begins eating at once. The meat must be inspected, cut, cooked, and divided. Stone flakes are brought forward. The injured man passes over the shaft he repaired. A woman who remained at camp chooses a clean working surface. Children fetch water. Each contribution joins the others. The hunter's success depends on the toolmaker. The toolmaker depends on those who gather food while tools are made. The gatherers depend on caregivers watching children. The caregivers depend on people carrying water and fuel. The entire system works because no one survives on personal effort alone. Food is placed over the fire. Fat begins to hiss against hot stone. Smoke thickens and drifts toward the stream. The smell is rich enough to make everyone quiet as portions are distributed. You notice that the hunters do not simply keep what they brought. Children receive pieces. The injured man receives some. Those who gathered roots are included. Even people who did not leave camp eat. Food sharing reduces the risk that one failed task becomes one person's disaster. A hunter may return empty-handed today and eat from another's success. Tomorrow, the pattern may reverse. Sharing transforms unpredictable luck into collective stability. Of course, generosity does not eliminate tension. Someone watches the largest portion. Another person notices who receives the fattest piece. Fairness is being measured, even without numbers. The person dividing the meat works carefully. Reputation matters. If distribution repeatedly favors one household or close relative, resentment may grow. Small communities cannot afford endless conflict. Yet they are not free from jealousy. You receive a modest piece of meat and a roasted root. The meal tastes better because hunger has been waiting all day. Around the fire, conversation rises gently. A hunter demonstrates how one animal changed direction. A child imitates the movement and nearly falls into the bedding. Several people laugh. Information travels with the story. The route is described. The tracks are remembered. The location of the carcass is discussed. Even storytelling performs work. Later, you sit near the stream and rinse your hands. The water carries grease away in silver patterns behind you. The camp continues to murmur. You imagine walking away alone. You might take a spear, a hide, a fire ember, and a bag of roots. For a day, perhaps 2, you could manage. Then the spear point breaks, the ember dies, you become ill, you sleep without anyone listening. Knowledge narrows to whatever fits inside one mind. The fantasy of complete independence fades quickly. Here, dependence is not weakness. It is the structure holding life together. You give up the freedom to work only when you choose. You give up the right to keep every success. You accept obligations to children who are not yours, elders who move slowly, and injured people who cannot yet contribute fully. In return, your own hunger is not yours alone. Your injury will be noticed. Your child will be carried. Your mistakes may be corrected before they become fatal. As darkness settles, bodies gather once more around the fire. The group looks small beneath the trees, almost fragile against the wide landscape. Yet every person is connected by food, memory, labour, and care. One body alone is vulnerable. Many bodies, moving with shared purpose, become something stronger, not invincible, but strong enough for another day. The following morning, a disagreement begins over a piece of meat no larger than your palm. It was saved from the previous evening, wrapped in leaves, and placed near the cooler rear wall of the shelter. Now it is missing. No one raises their voice at first. A woman checks beneath the hide where the food had been kept, An older man looks toward the children. One boy lowers his eyes too quickly. Another person glances toward a young hunter who's been eating more than usual since returning from the long pursuit. The camp becomes quiet. You can feel the change immediately. There are no written laws here. No carved rules hang beside the fire. No judge waits in another shelter to hear both sides. Yet everyone understands that taking hidden food without permission is not a small matter. Food carries effort. It carries trust. And in a hungry season, trust may be worth more than meat. Human groups living 100,000 years ago almost certainly followed social expectations, even though the details have disappeared. Cooperation on this scale could not survive without rules governing sharing, conflict, partnerships, movement, childcare, access to tools, and behavior around danger. The rules may not have been spoken in formal sentences. They may have been learned through watching, correction, teasing, anger, approval, exclusion, and story. You know them because everyone around you reacts when one is broken. The boy near the fire finally admits taking the meat. He does not explain much. Hunger is explanation enough. The woman who stored it looks angry, but she does not strike him. Another adult speaks quietly. The boy is made to sit beside the group while the missing portion is discussed. The response matters. A punishment that is too severe could harm a useful member of the community. No response at all could encourage others to take what they want. The group must protect fairness without damaging itself. This is social balance in its earliest form. Anthropologists studying mobile hunter-gatherer societies have often found strong expectations of sharing and restraint. Skilled hunters may gain respect, but boasting, hoarding, or trying to dominate others can invite ridicule or criticism. Modern groups are not living fossils, yet these patterns suggest how equality might be maintained in communities where cooperation is essential and material wealth remains limited. If one person gathers too much power, others can resist. They can argue. They can refuse cooperation. They can move away. Mobility makes leadership fragile. A person may guide a hunt because they know the terrain. Another may make decisions about plants because their knowledge is deeper. An elder may settle a dispute because people trust their memory. Authority changes with the task. There is no permanent throne beside the fire. The boy is told that he will receive a smaller portion later and must help gather fuel before the midday heat. The food cannot be returned, so the response focuses on restoring balance rather than undoing the impossible. He nods. The tension does not disappear immediately, but the camp begins moving again. You join several adults preparing for a journey upstream before leaving. One person warns the children not to approach a section of reeds where large animal tracks were found. This rule is practical and direct. Other rules are less visible. Who may sleep beside whom? Who can use a particular tool? Who speaks first during conflict? When should food be shared beyond the immediate household? How close may strangers approach the camp? You learn these boundaries through small moments. A young woman reaches for a stone point, then pauses and asks the toolmaker with a glance. Permission is given. A child interrupts an older speaker and is touched lightly on the shoulder. Two adults preparing to travel wait until the group knows where they're going. Nothing is written, yet very little is completely casual. One uncommon clue about ancient social life comes from long-distance materials and personal ornaments, shells found far inland, rare pigments, and stone carried from distant sources suggest that people maintained relationships beyond one small camp. Such connections may have involved gifts, partnerships, seasonal gatherings, and obligations between groups. An ornament could therefore be more than decoration. It might signal where someone came from, whom they were connected to, or whether they could be trusted. The exact meanings remain uncertain. Researchers continue to examine whether early symbolic objects reflected group identity. personal status, ritual behavior, or several purposes at once. A pierced shell cannot explain itself, and prehistoric people were inconsiderate enough not to leave captions. Still, objects can carry rules. Who is allowed to wear something? When is it given? What promise does it represent later in the day? Strangers appear across the stream. There are 4 of them. They stop before approaching the water, remaining visible between the trees. One raises an empty hand. The camp responds immediately but calmly. Several adults stand. Spears are kept close, though no one lifts them in attack. Children are moved behind the stone wall. An older person walks part way toward the stream and waits. This encounter follows a pattern. The strangers do not enter the camp freely. They announce themselves through distance and gesture. Your group does not rush forward. Both sides leave room for retreat. These unspoken procedures reduce danger. The visitors may be relatives, trading partners, or members of a neighboring community. They may know some people here but not others. Their arrival brings possibilities, including information, marriage connections, shared food, access to stone, and news about water or animals. It also brings risk. Disease can travel with people. Old conflicts can return. A hungry group may become desperate. Rules make contact possible without requiring blind trust. After several exchanges, the visitors are allowed closer. They sit near the outer fire rather than among the sleeping places. Water is shared first. Then a small amount of roasted root is offered. Hospitality has limits. No one gives them the entire food supply. One visitor produces a piece of fine dark stone, smoother and stronger than the material near this stream. The toolmaker examines it carefully. In return, your group offers red pigment and information about animal tracks east of the camp. The exchange is not measured with scales. Value is negotiated through need, rarity, relationship, and expectation. Perhaps the dark stone is a gift that creates future obligation. Perhaps it repays an earlier favor. Perhaps it confirms peace between groups. You cannot know, but everyone involved seems to understand more than the objects alone reveal. As the afternoon fades, the visitors prepare to leave. They are not invited to sleep inside the camp. One of them touches foreheads with an older woman before crossing the stream. Another smiles toward the children. The rules of closeness are flexible, but they exist. That evening, the dark stone is placed beside the fire. The toolmaker strikes it once, producing a thin, sharp flake. Several people lean closer. The boy who took the meat returns with a large bundle of wood across his shoulders. He places it beside the shelter and waits. The woman whose food he stole gives him a small roasted root, not meat, but food. The matter is not forgotten. It is also not allowed to destroy the group. You begin to see that unwritten laws live in memory and repetition. They survive because people teach them, enforce them, bend them, and occasionally forgive those who fail. You give up the freedom to act without consequences. You cannot take every object you desire, keep every resource you find, choose every relationship without concern, or walk into every camp as though the world belongs to you. In return, others accept limits too. They cannot freely take from you. They cannot ignore your child. They cannot endanger the group without answering to it. As night gathers beside the stream, the rules become invisible again. People eat, talk, repair tools, and settle beneath hides. Nothing is written. Nothing needs to be, for now. Everyone remembers. The boy who took the meat rises before most of the camp. Perhaps hunger wakes him. Perhaps embarrassment does. Perhaps he has simply learned that after breaking a rule, it is wise to look useful before anyone remembers breakfast. He moves quietly toward the fire, gathers several thin branches, and places them near the embers. An older woman watches from beneath a hide but says nothing. Approval here is often subtle. No one gives a speech about personal growth. The fire burns a little brighter. and that is enough. Nearby, 2 younger children are already awake. One sits with a smooth stick across their knees, copying the way adults hold spears. The other picks through yesterday's stone flakes, selecting pieces that glitter in the morning light. An adult reaches over and removes the sharpest one before a finger is opened. Childhood in this world is not separate from survival. There are moments of play, certainly. Children chase insects, imitate animals, laugh beside the water, and turn ordinary objects into toys. Yet play often rehearses the work they will soon be expected to perform. You watch the child with the stick creep toward a patch of grass. They lower their body, they pause, then they spring forward at an imaginary animal and fall face first into the dust. Several adults laugh softly. The child rises with great dignity and tries again. Around 100,000 years ago, human children probably experienced long periods of learning because survival required a remarkable range of skills. A person needed to recognize plants, animals, weather, tracks, stone, wood, water, social relationships, and danger. Much of this knowledge could not be learned from a single explanation. It required years of observation, imitation, correction, and practice. Human childhood is unusually long compared with that of many other mammals. This extended development is costly. Children consume food while contributing less than adults for many years. They need protection, teaching, and patience. Yet the same long childhood allows the brain to absorb complex traditions that no individual could invent alone. You join a small group heading toward the stream. The children come too. Today, they are learning where shellfish hide beneath stones. An older boy shows them how to place a hand into the water without stirring too much mud. One child reaches too quickly and comes up with nothing. Another lifts a stone and squeals when a small creature darts between their fingers. The adults do not complete every task for them. That would be faster. It would also produce adults who know nothing. So the group sacrifices immediate efficiency for future competence. A child takes longer to dig a root. A child drops gathered fruit. A child adds the wrong branch to the fire and fills the shelter with unpleasant smoke. Each mistake costs time, food, patience, or comfort. The alternative costs far more. You kneel beside the youngest learner and guide their fingers beneath a flat stone. The water is cold. Mud gathers beneath your nails. After several attempts, the child finds a shell and holds it up as though they have captured the moon. The adults react with approval. The shell contains barely a mouthful of food. The knowledge may feed them for years. Anthropologists observing present-day foraging communities often note that children begin contributing small amounts of food well before adulthood. Their early gathering may be inefficient, but competence grows steadily through participation. These observations cannot be transferred directly into deep prehistory, yet they help illustrate how learning and work may overlap rather than occupy separate worlds. There is no school building. The landscape is the classroom. The lesson continues while people walk. An older woman points to animal tracks near the muddy bank. She asks the children to look before she explains. One print is deep and rounded, another is narrow. A broken reed shows where something passed toward the water. The children guess. Some answers are wrong. No one appears shocked. Later, when the group follows a dry path between trees, the woman points to a plant with pale leaves. She touches it but does not gather it. The children are told to remember its smell. A similar-looking plant can be eaten. This one causes sickness. The difference is small. The consequence is not. Knowledge in this world is often stored through contrast. This root is safe after roasting. That one is not. This cloud brings brief rain. That cloud means shelter should be prepared. These tracks are old. Those tracks mean the animal may still be near. A lesser-known insight from studies of traditional learning is that formal verbal instruction may be less common than modern people expect. Children often learn by watching, attempting tasks and receiving correction when needed. Adults may demonstrate rather than explain every movement. This does not mean teaching is absent. It means teaching is woven into life. A hand placed over another hand, a warning sound, a repeated gesture. A story told beside the fire about someone who ignored a sign and suffered for it. Stories make dangerous knowledge easier to remember. Researchers continue to explore when complex teaching became central to human culture. Some argue that sophisticated tool-making and foraging knowledge would have required deliberate instruction. Others suggest imitation, participation, and simpler forms of guidance could transmit much of what people needed. The surviving evidence reveals the products of learning, but rarely the exact lesson. You return to camp carrying shellfish, roots, and wet reeds. Near the fire, the injured man is shaping a wooden shaft. A girl sits beside him, watching every scrape of stone against wood. After a while, he gives her a smaller stick and a worn scraper. Her first movements are clumsy. The tool slips. He takes it back, demonstrates the angle, and returns it. This process repeats many times. The shaft she works on may never become a useful spear. It may split, bend, or be abandoned. Yet the wasted wood is part of the price of learning. Modern classrooms often separate practice from consequence. A mistake on paper can be erased. Here, practice consumes real materials and real energy. A poorly made tool may fail. A forgotten water source may cost a journey. A careless movement near prey may leave everyone hungry. Children learn gently when possible because the world will test them harshly later. By afternoon, several older children gather fuel without adult supervision. They remain within calling distance. Each carries a modest bundle. One returns with damp branches and is sent back to find better wood. No one praises effort alone. The fire requires fuel that burns. Still, the correction is calm. The child looks disappointed, adjusts the bundle, and tries again. You begin to notice how responsibility expands in small stages. A toddler carries a twig, an older child watches a younger one. A teenager joins a gathering group, then later follows hunters at a distance. Skills are added slowly, with risk controlled as much as possible. There may have been no fixed age for adulthood. Maturity likely depended on physical development, social expectations, competence, family relationships, and local custom. A young person who could track well might gain responsibility early. Another might be valued for memory, patience, or tool-making. Childhood is not carefree, it is preparation. As evening approaches, the camp eats beside the fire. One child contributes the shell found that morning. It is opened, cooked, and added to a shared portion. The amount is tiny. The pride is enormous. Later, the older woman begins telling a story about a traveller who mistook one plant for another. Her voice is quiet. The children listen closely because the story contains danger, humour, and a lesson hidden inside both. You watch their faces in the firelight. They have spent the day working, failing, observing, carrying, and remembering. Their games imitate hunting. Their mistakes become instruction. Their growing bodies are already being shaped by obligation to survive. The group gives up the idea that childhood belongs entirely to play, yet it does not remove play altogether. The child with a practice spear lifts it once more and pretends to defend the camp from a shadow on the wall. The shadow retreats obediently. Someone laughs. For a moment, learning, work, and imagination become the same thing. Tomorrow, the children will try again. They will dig more carefully, listen more closely, carry a little farther, and one day, when the adults beside this fire are gone, The skills practiced in dust and shallow water will keep another fire alive. The lesson in careful movement begins the next morning with a stone hidden beneath dry grass. You do not see it. Your foot lands at an angle, the ankle folds, and your body drops before you can stop it. One hand strikes the ground. Dust rises around your face. Pain flashes upward through the leg, sharp enough to empty your thoughts. For a moment, you remain still. Several people turn immediately. No one asks whether the ground should have been more considerate. The ground has no interest in apologies. An older hunter crouches beside you and places both hands around the ankle. He presses gently along the bone. Watching your expression, the joint hurts, but it does not appear broken. You are helped upright. When you place weight on the foot, pain returns, though you can still stand. This is a minor injury. In your modern life, it might mean ice, rest, pain relief, and an afternoon spent complaining from a comfortable chair. Here, it changes the calculations of everyone preparing to leave camp. Around 100,000 years ago, ordinary survival demanded constant physical effort. People walked long distances, carried children and supplies, climbed over rough ground, dug into hard soil, butchered animals, gathered fuel, and approached creatures capable of causing severe injury. The human body was not merely present in the survival system, it was the main machine, and there were no spare parts. You are told to remain near camp while the others travel toward higher ground. This feels sensible for perhaps half a moment. Then embarrassment arrives. Food is low enough that every capable adult matters. Sitting near the fire while others walk away makes you feel less useful, even though forcing the injury could make it worse. The injured man from earlier watches you with mild amusement. He understands the frustration. He offers you a wooden shaft that needs smoothing. So you sit, extend the swollen foot toward the warmth, and scrape wood with a stone edge. The emotion is repetitive. Thin curls fall across your knees. The work does not require walking, yet it contributes something. Still, your attention remains on the people disappearing between the trees. Their task is dangerous in a quiet, ordinary way. They are not marching into battle. They are looking for food. Several hunters have followed tracks belonging to large grazing animals, if they can approach closely enough. They may use thrusting spears or throw lighter weapons. Depending on the tools available to this particular group, success requires coordination, patience, and a willingness to come far closer to a frightened animal than most modern people would enjoy. Stone points from Middle Stone Age sites reveal careful shaping and, in some cases, evidence that they were attached to wooden shafts. Adhesive compounds may have combined plant gums, resins, ochre, or other ingredients. Producing such a weapon required planning across several stages. First, find appropriate stone, then shape the point, prepare the shaft, create bindings, make adhesive, attach everything securely. Finally, trust the tool while standing near an animal that has horns, hooves, muscle, and a strong desire not to become supper. The elegance of the finished spear can hide the risk carried by the hand holding it. Back at camp, a caregiver wraps cool, damp plant material around your ankle. Whether it has medicinal value or simply reduces heat and swelling, the touch is comforting. The binding is secured with fiber cord. You continue working. The hours pass slowly. Children gather fuel within sight of the shelter. An older woman sorts roots collected the previous day. The recovering man tests the flex of a newly shaped spear shaft. Everyone whose body cannot travel still finds some way to reduce the burden on those who can. Near midday, shouts rise from beyond the stream. They are not screams, but the camp becomes alert. Several people stand. A hunting party appears between the trees carrying meat. Behind them, two others support a young man whose arm hangs strangely against his side. Success and injury arrived together. The animal was taken. Though you do not see the full carcass, much of it has been butchered where it fell because carrying every part would require too much energy. The hunters bring selected portions of meat, hide, sinew, and bone. The young man's shoulder is injured. He may have fallen during the pursuit. Perhaps the animal changed direction. Perhaps he struck stone while trying to move aside. No one offers a dramatic account yet. First, the load is lowered, then the injury is examined. People in deep prehistory lived with fractures, damaged joints, cuts, burns, and repetitive strain. Archaeologists have found ancient skeletons showing healed injuries, sometimes severe ones. Healing indicates not merely physical endurance, but survival through a period when the injured person may have struggled to gather food, travel, or defend themselves. Some individuals clearly lived long after serious impairment. That suggests care. It also suggests sacrifice from others. The hunter is seated near the wall. One person steadies his chest while another carefully tests the shoulder. He clenches his jaw but does not cry out. The joint may be dislocated. The group cannot see beneath the skin, and no written medical manual explains what to do. Experience guides them. Older people may have seen similar injuries. They know that a limb held in the wrong position can become useless. They also know that moving it may cause more pain or damage. Researchers cannot reconstruct most prehistoric treatments with certainty. Plant remedies decay. Splints made from wood disappear. Massage, heat, washing, and practical knowledge leave little archaeological trace. Bones sometimes reveal the outcome, but rarely the hands that produced it. The arm is finally bound against the hunter's body with hide and fibre. He will not hunt again soon. Yet the meat he helped obtain is already being cut beside the fire. Stone flakes move through muscle and connective tissue. Fat is separated carefully. Sinew is saved for bindings. The hide will require hours of processing. Long bones are placed aside to be broken later for marrow. A hunt is not finished when the animal falls. The carcass must be converted into useful material before heat. Insects, scavengers, and decay claim it. You help from your seated position, using the sharpened stone to slice small strips of meat. Your injured ankle throbs, but your hands remain steady, nearby. The hunter with the bound shoulder watches others process what he risked his body to obtain. He looks tired rather than triumphant. Prehistoric hunting is often imagined as a test of courage, but courage alone is a poor strategy. Skilled hunters studied wind, terrain, animal behavior, escape routes, and the abilities of each participant. They sought to reduce danger, not celebrate it. Even so, risk could never be removed. A broken leg might prevent migration. A damaged hand could end a person's ability to shape tools. A deep cut might become infected. A simple fall could turn a provider into someone who needed months of support. This is the bargain made each time the group leaves camp. Bodies are placed between hunger and food. As evening settles, the smell of roasting meat fills the shelter. Portions are larger than they have been for several days. The children eat with shining fingers. Fat softens their expressions. Conversation begins to return. The injured hunter receives a good portion. Though he needs help cutting it into manageable pieces, you're given meat as well. Despite having remained behind, no one says that you failed to earn it. Your work on the wooden shaft, your help with processing, and your place within the group are enough. Outside, insects hum above the dark stream. Firelight touches the wrapping around your ankle and the binding holding the hunter's arm. Two injured bodies sit close to the warmth while others prepare hides and store food. You understand now that physical survival does not require a fearless body. It requires a body used carefully, tested constantly, and supported when it fails. You give up safety every time you cross broken ground, climb toward a nest. approach water crowded with tracks, or stand within reach of frightened prey. But you do not risk yourself for glory. You risk yourself because children are hungry, because fire needs wood, because hides must be carried, because tomorrow asks for energy before it offers any in return. The hunter beside you leans back against the stone, his eyes close. Someone places a folded hide beneath his injured arm. The body has paid for today's food. Now the group must help it heal. The injured hunter does not sleep well. You know this because no one near him sleeps well either. Throughout the night, he shifts against the stone wall, trying to find a position that does not pull at his shoulder. Each movement produces a quiet breath through clenched teeth. The arm remains bound against his chest. Someone wakes to adjust the folded hide beneath it. Another person adds wood to the fire because cold makes pain sharper. Your ankle throbs beneath its wrapping. The two of you sit awake for part of the darkness, listening to rain touch the leaves beyond the shelter. Neither of you speaks much. Pain does not always need conversation. Sometimes it simply wants company. By morning, the hunter's face looks drawn. The skin around his shoulder is swollen. No one can see exactly what has happened inside the joint. There is no image of the bone, no trained specialist, no bottle of medicine waiting in a cabinet. There are only hands, memory, plants, heat, water, rest, and judgment. For people living around 100,000 years ago, pain was not a temporary interruption managed by a separate medical system. It was woven into ordinary life: cuts, burns, tooth problems, strained joints, infections, parasites, and old injuries would have affected daily movement and sleep. Some conditions healed, others became permanent companions. You watch an older woman unwrap the hunter's arm. She touches the skin carefully, first near the elbow, then higher. Her fingers move slowly. She's not guessing blindly. She may have treated similar injuries before. Knowledge gathered across many bodies can become practical medicine, even when no written theory explains it. The young man winces when the shoulder is tested. The arm is bound again. Rest is the safest choice. Though rest has a cost, he will not hunt, carry heavy loads, or help move camp. Others must take on that work. His value to the group has not disappeared, but the form of his contribution must change. You understand this from your own ankle. Walking is possible now. Though uncomfortable, you can stand near the fire, prepare food, scrape hide, and shape small tools. You cannot yet travel far without risking another fall, so you learn the slow discipline of healing. You stop before the body forces you to stop. This sounds simple, it is not. Hunger encourages movement. Pride encourages movement. The sight of others carrying your share encourages movement. Yet an injury made worse can burden the group for much longer. Skeletal remains from prehistoric people sometimes show fractures that healed over months or years. One well-known pattern across ancient human populations is the survival of individuals with serious injuries or physical impairments. A badly healed bone may reduce movement permanently, but the fact that it healed at all means the person lived through the vulnerable period after the injury. That survival often implies assistance. Someone brought food. Someone maintained fire. Someone slowed the journey. Someone tolerated dependence. Care leaves fewer traces than injury, but a healed bone is one of its quiet signatures. Later in the morning, a child brings water from the stream. Another person heats several rounded stones in the fire. When they are hot, the stones are transferred carefully into a hide-lined container holding water. Steam rises. The warm water is used to clean a cut on your palm from yesterday's tool work. Washing wounds may reduce dirt and contamination, though prehistoric people had no concept of bacteria in the modern sense. They could still observe that some wounds healed better when cleaned, protected, or treated with particular substances. Human beings do not need microscopes to notice patterns. This leaf seems to cool swelling. That bark eases discomfort. A wound covered in filth worsens. A burn kept clean sometimes heals. Such knowledge develops slowly through success, failure, memory, and imitation. A small bundle of crushed leaves is placed against your ankle. The smell is sharp and green. Whether the plant truly reduces inflammation, distracts the senses, or simply provides comfort is impossible for you to know. Comfort matters too. Modern people sometimes separate medicine from reassurance, as though kindness were decorative. Here, a calm voice, a warm hand, or a person remaining nearby may help someone endure a treatment that cannot remove the pain. Evidence of plant medicine in deep prehistory remains difficult to interpret. Pollen, residues, dental calculus, and preserved plant remains occasionally suggest that ancient humans consumed species with possible medicinal properties. Yet a bitter plant may have been food, flavoring, fuel, or accidental contamination. Specialists therefore remain cautious about claiming a prehistoric pharmacy where the evidence supports only possibility. The uncertainty is honest. Most treatments were made from materials that decay. Leaves vanish, wooden splints rot, fibre bandages disappear. The archaeological record preserves stone more faithfully than tenderness. Near midday, an older man begins working at his teeth with a thin wooden sliver. He has been avoiding one side of his mouth while eating. Now you see why. One tooth near the back is dark and damaged. Each touch makes his eyes narrow. Dental pain must have been common. Grit from stone-ground foods, hard seeds, accidental fractures, and decay could wear teeth or expose sensitive tissue. Ancient people sometimes survived severe tooth loss, adapting by eating softer foods, prepared by others. There is no reliable way to numb the pain. The man rinses his mouth with warm water infused with plant material. Later, someone gives him softened root rather than dried meat. A small adjustment in food preparation allows him to keep eating. That may be the only treatment available. One lesser-known discovery from prehistoric remains is that grooves between teeth sometimes show repeated use of small sticks. Perhaps for cleaning or easing discomfort, the mark suggests that people manipulated painful spaces in the mouth long before dentistry, mirrors, or anyone cheerfully asking whether you have been flossing. The image brings a little amusement to the shelter. The older man notices you watching and gives an irritated look. Some experiences truly connect to all of humanity during the afternoon. The hunter with the injured shoulder begins shaping cord with his uninjured hand. The work is slow. Fibers are rolled against the thigh and twisted together. He drops them several times. No one takes the task away. Being cared for does not mean becoming useless. Work can restore dignity and keep knowledge active while the body recovers. He shows a younger child how to twist the fibers evenly. The child uses both hands and works faster, but the hunter sees mistakes the child misses. Pain changes his role. It does not erase it as the day cools. An older woman walks with you along the edge of the stream. You move carefully. She watches your steps but does not hold your arm. The ankle bears weight better than yesterday. Healing is measured in small returns. One more step, a little less swelling, a night with longer sleep, food eaten without help. These improvements may seem modest, but in a mobile community they determine whether everyone can leave when the water falls or the animals move. Some injuries never fully disappear. A stiff joint may ache in cold weather. A badly set fracture may shorten a stride. Scar tissue may limit the hand. Chronic pain may shape where someone sleeps, what work they perform, and how quickly the group travels. You may carry the memory of one fall inside the body for the rest of your life. By evening, the fire is surrounded by quiet work. The toothache sufferer eats mashed root. The hunter twists cord. You scrape a hide with your injured foot stretched toward the warmth. No one is cured, everyone is managing. That is often what healing means here. You give up the expectation that pain will be quickly removed. You surrender the idea that every injury has an answer, every illness has a name, and every body can be restored to what it was before. Instead, you accept care measured in water, warmth, softer food, shared labor, and patience. The fire lowers. Someone adjusts the hunter's binding before sleep. Another places fresh leaves against your ankle. The older man settles with one hand against his jaw. Pain remains in the shelter. So does compassion. And through that quiet exchange, bodies that might have been abandoned are carried forward into another morning. The group begins preparing to move again 3 mornings later. The stream has fallen slightly. Animal tracks now lead farther east, and the edible roots near camp are becoming difficult to find. Nothing is desperate yet, but experienced people recognize the direction of change before hunger makes the decision for them. Hides are rolled, tools are wrapped, food is divided into carrying portions. Your ankle has improved enough to walk, though the swelling has not completely disappeared. The young hunter can move comfortably, but his injured arm remains bound close to his chest. The older man with the painful tooth has eaten little solid food. 2 small children cannot travel quickly, and the oldest woman in the group pauses before standing. The journey will be shaped by the slowest bodies. You notice this as soon as the line begins moving. Several healthy adults could cover the distance much faster. They could reach the next water source before midday, scout for food, and prepare a camp while the light remains strong instead. The group advances at a careful pace. One adult carries an infant against the chest. Another holds the hand of a tired child. The injured hunter carries almost nothing. The older woman walks with a staff, placing each foot deliberately on uneven ground. Progress becomes a collective compromise. For early human communities, mobility did not mean that every individual moved with equal speed or strength. Infants, pregnant people, injured adults, older members, and small children all required accommodation. A group that refused to slow down might travel more efficiently for a day, but it would lose caregivers, knowledge, relationships, and future generations. You walk beside the older woman. She has been the one identifying plants, remembering water, and correcting children when they confuse similar tracks. Today, she needs help crossing a narrow section of loose stone. You offer your forearm. She accepts without ceremony. Her grip is surprisingly strong once across. She points toward a line of darker vegetation in the distance. She remembers water there from an earlier journey, though she cannot say how many seasons have passed. This memory may save everyone hours of searching. The exchange is plain. You give balance. She gives direction. Care in this world is rarely separate from survival. It is woven into movement, food, learning, and decision-making. The person who slows the group today may hold knowledge that allows the group to move at all tomorrow. Archaeological evidence offers several examples of prehistoric individuals who lived with serious physical limitations. Some skeletons show healed fractures, missing limbs, severe joint damage, or tooth loss that would have made independent survival difficult. The precise details of their lives remain unknowable, but prolonged survival suggests that other people supplied food, protection, or assistance. One particularly striking lesson is that compassion can be practical without becoming cold. A person is helped because they are loved. They may also be helped because they remember drought routes, teach tool making, calm children, resolve disputes, or maintain relationships with neighboring groups. Affection and usefulness are not opposites. The line of travelers reaches a shallow ravine. The slope is not steep, but loose gravel makes the descent difficult. Healthy adults cross first and place bundles on the far side. Then they return. The children are passed down carefully. The infant remains secured against a caregiver. The injured hunter is guided by two people because he cannot use one arm to balance. When the older woman begins descending, 3 adults remain close. The entire crossing takes time. The sun climbs higher. Water supplies become lighter. A modern traveller might view the delay as inefficient. A navigation app would probably announce that a faster route is available, which would be extremely helpful if the faster route did not involve abandoning your grandmother in a ravine. Here, speed is only one measure of success. Arriving together is another. Researchers still examine how caregiving influenced human evolution. Some propose that extensive cooperation helped humans support children with long developmental periods, injured adults, and older individuals beyond their most physically productive years. Others warn against reading modern moral ideas directly into ancient bones. A healed injury proves survival, but not exactly who helped, why they helped, or how care was organized. Even so, repeated evidence of survival after severe trauma is difficult to explain through solitude. Someone remained nearby. Someone shared calories. Someone changed a plan. The group rests beneath a cluster of trees near midday. Food is distributed in small amounts. The oldest woman receives softened root because chewing is easier. The hunter with the injured shoulder is given water before those who carried the heaviest loads. A child complains that their portion is too small and is answered with a look that ends the discussion. Care does not always feel fair to those who need less of it. Resources given to one person cannot be used by another during scarcity. Supporting someone who contributes little immediate labour may increase risk for everyone. This is the harder side of compassion. It costs something: food, time, energy, opportunity. The group must repeatedly decide whether those costs can be carried. There were probably moments in deep prehistory when people could not save everyone. Severe illness, sudden danger, famine, and difficult terrain may have forced painful choices. Archaeology rarely reveals the emotional weight behind such decisions. It preserves bodies and objects, not conversations beside dying fires. You do not romanticize the world around you. Kindness exists, but it is not limitless. Neither are strength, food, or time. After the rest, the journey continues. The oldest child begins carrying a smaller child who's become sleepy. The arrangement looks awkward. Both sway with each step. An adult watches but allows them to continue. Shared care begins early. In many recent foraging societies, siblings and other children assist with childcare. This does not prove an identical system 100,000 years ago, but humans are well suited to cooperative parenting. Infants require years of investment, and mothers alone cannot gather, travel, recover, and protect children without support. A useful but easily overlooked detail is that human babies are remarkably inconvenient travelers. They cannot cling as effectively as the infants of many other primates. So caregivers must support or carry them. Slings made from hide or plant fiber would have transformed mobility, though such materials rarely survive archaeologically. The infant against the caregiver's chest sleeps through most of the journey. Its head rests beneath the adult's chin. The sling distributes weight across the back, but the burden remains considerable. When the caregiver tires, another person takes over. The child belongs to particular parents. Its survival belongs to the group. By late afternoon, the line reaches the darker vegetation remembered by the older woman. There is water. Not a wide stream, only a spring emerging between stones and feeding a shallow pool. Fresh tracks surround it. Green plants grow nearby. Everyone becomes more alert as relief passes through the group. The older woman sits in the shade. No one celebrates loudly, but several people touch her shoulder as they pass. Her slow body carried a fast memory. Without her, the group might have continued in the wrong direction. Camp is established nearby. Healthy adults gather fuel and inspect the area. Children collect grass. The injured hunter sits near the spring and begins repairing cord with one hand. Your ankle aches from the journey, so you help arrange bedding rather than search farther. Work adjusts itself around ability. As dusk arrives, the group gathers beside the new fire. The oldest woman tells the children how she remembered the spring. She describes a fallen tree that once stood nearby and a season when the water tasted of ash after distant fires. The landscape has changed. Her memory adapted. This knowledge now belongs to younger listeners. You see clearly what would have been lost if the group had chosen speed over her survival. Not only one person, a map, a history, a library without pages. You have given up distance today. You have surrendered daylight, hunting time, and physical ease to remain beside those who could not move quickly. The cost was real. So was the reward. The infant breathes safely beneath a hide. The injured hunter still teaches. The older woman has led everyone to water. Your own healing ankle has been allowed to recover rather than break again under an unforgiving pace. Beside the fire, you understand that strength is not only the power to move fastest. Sometimes it's the willingness to slow down. Sometimes survival means carrying those who cannot keep up. And sometimes the person who appears to delay the journey is the reason anyone reaches the destination. The new camp beside the spring feels peaceful by the second evening. Water gathers steadily between the stones. Fresh grass grows nearby. The fire burns without much smoke because the fuel here is dry, after days of movement, injury, hunger, and uncertain shelter. The place almost invites you to believe that life might remain simple for a while. Then two people announce that they want to leave. They are young, healthy, and closely attached to one another for several evenings. They have sat near the edge of the fire, speaking quietly after everyone else settles. Now they stand before the group with small bundles already prepared. They want to travel south. One of them remembers a seasonal gathering place near a distant ridge. Relatives may be there. Better stone may be available. There may also be more food, though no one knows for certain. The other wants to go because separation seems worse than uncertainty. Their desire is understandable. It is also not entirely their own decision. In a small mobile community, personal choices affect everyone. If two capable adults leave, the group loses hunters, carriers, caregivers, tool users, and watchful eyes. If they remain unwillingly, resentment may weaken cooperation. If the group tries to prevent them, conflict may become more dangerous than their departure. You sit near the spring and listen as people speak. No formal leader controls the discussion. The oldest woman asks questions about the route. A skilled hunter points out that game has recently moved east, not south. A caregiver reminds everyone that the injured hunter still cannot carry much. Another person says the young pair have relatives beyond the ridge and should not be treated like prisoners. The matter is practical. It is also emotional. Human partnerships around 100,000 years ago cannot be reconstructed in precise detail. People almost certainly formed long-term social bonds, sexual relationships, kin networks, and alliances between groups. But the rules would have varied across regions and communities. Marriage as a later legal institution did not yet exist. Yet attachment, jealousy, obligation, and family strategy were already part of human life. Personal desire had to negotiate with collective need. You know the feeling in smaller ways. There are mornings when you would rather remain beside the warmth than gather fuel. There are meals when you want the larger portion. There are journeys when you would choose the easier path, even if someone else needs help along the harder one. The group survives because those preferences are often restrained, not erased. Restrained. This distinction matters. A person who never considers personal needs may become exhausted, angry, or careless. A group that ignores individual desire may drive people away. Cooperation works best when people feel that sacrifice is shared rather than imposed on the same few bodies again and again. The discussion continues until the light fades. The young pair agree to wait 3 days. During that time, scouts will check the southern route. The group will assess food near the spring, if conditions allow. Several people may travel together to the seasonal gathering rather than sending two alone. The decision satisfies no one completely. That is often the sign of a workable compromise. The next morning, you join a gathering party heading toward low hills east of camp. One of the young people who hope to leave comes too. They walk ahead in silence, carrying a digging stick and hide bag. At first, the distance between you feels deliberate. Then the ground becomes rocky, and everyone must pay attention. The group finds edible roots beneath a patch of pale flowers. Work begins. Soil is hard from recent dryness. Each root requires patient digging. The young traveller uncovers several large ones and places them in the common bag rather than a private bundle. No one comments. The action is noticed. One of the oldest forms of social pressure may have been reputation. People remembered who shared, who helped during danger, who avoided work, and who repeatedly placed personal desire above collective need. In small communities, there was no easy anonymity. Your choices followed you through stories and memory. Reputation could influence who trusted you with food, who joined you on a hunt, who supported you during injury, and which group welcomed you after travel. A lesser-known aspect of many hunter-gatherer societies is the use of teasing or humour to discourage arrogance. A successful hunter may be mocked rather than praised too loudly. Someone who behaves selfishly may become the subject of jokes. Laughter can correct behaviour without producing open violence. By midday, the young traveller has gathered more roots than anyone else. An older man lifts one unusually large tuber and says, with exaggerated seriousness, that clearly the earth itself has decided to follow this person south. Several people laugh. The young traveller smiles despite trying not to. The tension softens. Humour has made space for dignity. Back at camp, the roots are roasted. A portion is set aside for the scouts who left before dawn. Another portion goes to the injured hunter and the children. No one eats until the divisions are made. You notice the young pair sitting together, watching. They're not excluded from the meal. Their wish to leave has not made them enemies. This is important because loyalty cannot survive if every disagreement is treated as betrayal. People need room to choose. The challenge is determining where choice ends and obligation begins. Researchers continue to explore how early human groups managed movement between communities. Genetic and archaeological evidence suggests that people did not live in completely isolated bands. Individuals likely moved, partnered across group boundaries, visited seasonal gathering places, and maintained relationships over distance. Such movement could reduce inbreeding, spread knowledge, and connect groups during scarcity. It also meant that belonging was flexible. A person might be born in one group, travel with another, and maintain obligations to several sets of relatives. The group was essential. It was not always permanent. Late in the afternoon, the scouts return. They found the southern path difficult but passable. There are signs of people near the ridge, including fresh ashes and footprints. Water exists along the route, though one source is shallow. This changes the discussion. The young pair were not chasing an impossible dream. The seasonal gathering may truly be active. Contact could bring information, stone, partners, and support. The oldest woman proposes a larger journey after several days of preparation. Some people will remain near the spring with the injured and very young. Others will travel south, exchange information, and perhaps return with relatives. The young pair agree. Their personal desire becomes part of the group's strategy. No one receives everything they wanted. They cannot leave immediately or alone. The group must divide labour and food. Those remaining behind will lose strong workers for several days. Those travelling will carry messages, obligations, and goods that are not solely theirs. Choice has been transformed into responsibility. As evening falls, preparations begin, shell ornaments are checked, pigment is wrapped, the dark stone received from visitors is divided into useful pieces. One person prepares dried roots for the journey, another repairs carrying slings. The young pair help with every task. You sit beside the fire, shaping a small scraper. Your ankle is nearly healed now. You could volunteer for the southern journey, and part of you wants to. A new landscape, unfamiliar people, different stories, and perhaps better food all called from beyond the ridge. Then you look toward the spring. The oldest woman will remain here. So will the hunter with the injured shoulder. Several children need care. Fuel must be gathered. The camp must be guarded. You choose to stay. The decision brings a small disappointment. No one forces you. That makes the sacrifice feel more real. You understand now that survival does not only demand strength, courage, or skill. It demands the repeated surrender of immediate desire. You may want the fattest portion, but someone weaker needs it. You may want solitude, but the fire needs watching. You may want to travel, but the camp needs hands. You may love one person deeply, yet your choices still move through a wider circle of lives. The fire burns lower, across from you. The young pair sit close, their bundles ready for a journey that now serves more than themselves. Around them, others sleep beneath shared hides. Individual longing has not disappeared. It has been woven into the needs of the group. And in that compromise, imperfect and human, another path toward survival opens beneath the stars. The travellers leave for the southern ridge before sunrise. You stand beside the spring and watch their shapes fade between the trees. The young pair walk near the front, carrying food, pigment, stone, and messages for people they may find beyond the hills. Others travel with them for safety. Their footsteps become softer, then disappear. The camp feels smaller afterward. The oldest woman remains near the fire. The injured hunter is improving, though one arm still moves carefully. Several children collect grass beside the water. You gather fuel and listen to the ordinary sounds of morning, yet the landscape seems changed by absence. You wonder where the travellers are now. Have they reached the rocky path? Have they found water? Will the people near the ridge welcome them? There is no way to know. Uncertainty fills the empty space where knowledge ends. For people living 100,000 years ago, much of the world could not be explained through measurement, writing, or distant communication. Weather changed without warning. Illness entered the body unseen. Animals disappeared and returned. Dreams created vivid encounters with absent or dead companions. The night sky moved according to patterns that could be observed but not fully understood. Human minds searched for connections. A storm might follow a broken rule. A successful hunt might seem linked to a gesture, place, animal, dream, or object. A death might suggest that something had left the body while the body remained. You cannot reconstruct the exact beliefs held around this fire. No voice survives to explain them. Still, evidence from pigments, ornaments, carefully placed objects, and possible burials suggest that early humans sometimes acted according to meanings beyond immediate physical survival. That does not mean they possessed one shared religion. There were likely many ways of understanding the world, each shaped by local animals, landscapes, memories, and relationships. The oldest woman sits beside the spring with a piece of red ochre. She grinds it against a flat stone, creating fine powder. A little water is added until the colour becomes a thick paste. She marks a line across the injured hunter's forearm. then places several dots near his shoulder. Perhaps the pigment protects, perhaps it identifies, perhaps it marks healing, belonging, or memory. Perhaps it simply feels appropriate. The action is meaningful to those watching, even though its meaning remains hidden from you. Ochre use reaches far into prehistory. Red pigments appear at numerous African sites associated with early Homo sapiens. Some pieces show scraping or grinding, and a few carry deliberate markings. Ochre may have served practical purposes in hide preparation, adhesive production, sun protection, decoration, or ritual. The same material can be useful and symbolic at once. Modern people sometimes divide the world into categories such as science, art, medicine, and religion around this spring. Those boundaries may not exist. A plant can feed, heal, and carry a story. An animal can be prey, danger, ancestor, teacher, or sign. A red mark can protect skin while also expressing identity. The world is not separated into neat drawers. Everything touches everything else. A child watches the pigment preparation and asks a question through gesture. The oldest woman answers by pointing toward the southern ridge, then toward the sky. The travellers are being discussed. Perhaps the mark is connected to their safe return. You glance toward the hills. Clouds gather above them. By midday, the air feels heavy. Birds call more sharply near the spring. The wind falls quiet, then returns from a different direction. People begin moving food, tools, and bedding closer to shelter. No one needs a scientific forecast to recognize approaching weather. Observation has taught them. Still, knowledge cannot guarantee control. Thunder rolls beyond the ridge. The children grow quiet. One adult adds fuel to the fire before rain begins. Another covers the best tinder. The oldest woman places a shell ornament near the stone wall and touches it briefly. You cannot tell whether this is habit, hope, or appeal. People in uncertain environments often develop rituals because action feels better than helplessness. Repeated gestures can provide order when outcomes remain unpredictable. They may also strengthen group identity, reduce anxiety, and make shared decisions feel meaningful. Academics continue to disagree about when fully developed ritual behavior emerged. Some interpret early burials, pigment use, engraved objects, and ornaments as evidence of symbolic thought comparable in important ways to later humans. Others argue that isolated finds do not reveal entire belief systems and should be treated cautiously. Both positions acknowledge the same difficulty. Meaning does not fossilize easily. The rain arrives suddenly. Water strikes leaves, stone, and stretched hide. The spring darkens beneath the downpour. Wind pushes smokes into the shelter, forcing everyone to shift position. Lightning flashes above the trees. A child grips your arm. You feel the small fingers tighten. You know what lightning is in modern terms. But the body still reacts before explanation. The flash is too bright. The thunder arrives too large. For a moment, the world seems alive with intention. Imagine experiencing this without instruments, weather maps, or knowledge of electricity. The storm may be understood through stories. Perhaps a powerful being moves above the clouds. Perhaps ancestors are angered. Perhaps animals of the sky are fighting. Perhaps the storm is simply part of the landscape's personality. A story does not stop the rain. It can make the rain less meaningless. The oldest woman begins speaking over the thunder. Her tone is steady rather than frightened. The children listen. You catch repeated gestures toward the sky, water, and fire. The story may have been told many times. Its familiar shape calms the shelter. This is one practical value of belief. It gives fear a pattern. It tells people what to do, how to wait, and what the storm means within a larger world. Outside, water rushes through the grass, the spring overflows its usual edge. Everyone works to keep bedding dry. No one simply sits and trusts the story. Belief does not replace action. It travels beside it when the storm passes. Evening light breaks beneath the clouds. Water drips from every branch. Steam rises where rain strikes warm stone. The fire has survived, though barely. People emerge slowly. The landscape smells clean, green, and newly opened. A large branch has fallen near the spring. Fresh mud records the tracks of animals that moved during the storm. One child finds a dead bird beneath the leaves and carries it toward the oldest woman. She examines it. The bird may become food before it is prepared. She touches its feathers and speaks softly. You wonder whether she thanks it, names it, or simply explains what happened. Human attitudes toward animals were probably complex. Hunters depended on close knowledge of prey behavior. Animals could provide meat, fat, bone, hide, sinew, feathers, and symbolic imagery. Some species may have been treated with particular respect or fear. Later societies across the world developed rich traditions connecting animals with identity in the unseen world. Deep prehistory may contain early forms of such thinking, though the evidence cannot reveal a complete system. The bird is cleaned and roasted. Practical need continues. Nothing is wasted after dark. The group sits close to the fire. The storm has cooled the air. The oldest woman tells another story, this one involving a traveller who follows an animal through darkness and returns with knowledge of hidden water. The children listen. The injured hunter listens too. You notice how the story joins survival and mystery. It teaches that animals reveal paths, that water may be hidden, that travellers can return, and that courage should be guided by attention. It may also comfort those waiting for the southern party. The travellers are absent, but they remain present in words. Dreams will carry them closer tonight. If someone dreams of danger, the dream may influence tomorrow's decisions. If someone dreams of a safe return, hope may become stronger. Dreams are private experiences, yet sharing them turns them into social information. Some specialists have suggested that dreaming, storytelling, and ritual helped humans imagine events beyond the present moment. Others caution that inner experience leaves no direct archaeological evidence. Even so, the human capacity to create unseen worlds is clearly ancient. You lie back beneath the hide. The fire flickers against wet stone. Beyond the shelter, droplets continue falling from leaves with a soft, regular sound. You do not know whether the travellers are safe. You do not know why storms come, why people dream of the dead, or why certain objects feel powerful. The world offers no clear answers, so people build answers together. They shape uncertainty into stories. They mark bodies with colour. They repeat gestures during danger. They remember those who are absent. To survive, you give up certainty. You accept that much of life will remain hidden, unpredictable, and beyond control. Yet from that surrender comes something distinctly human, not perfect knowledge, meaning, and beneath the wet trees, with the fire breathing softly beside you, meaning is enough to make the darkness feel less empty. The southern travellers return on the fifth evening. You hear them before you see them. A child near the spring stops gathering reeds and turns toward the trees. Someone else lifts their head from the hide being scraped beside the fire. Then comes the soft rhythm of feet over damp ground, followed by voices that belong to people the camp has been waiting for. The young pair appear first. They are tired, dusty, and smiling. Behind them walk the others who left with them, along with two unfamiliar visitors carrying bundles of stone and dried food. No one runs forward shouting. The welcome is quieter than that. Hands touch shoulders. Faces are studied. Children gather close. The oldest woman rises slowly and places both palms against the cheeks of one traveller. Relief moves through the camp like warmth. The travellers bring news of relatives near the ridge, a larger gathering beside another water source, and animal herds moving across the southern grasslands. They also carry fine stone, several shells, and a small piece of yellow pigment unlike the red ochre already used here. Yet what changes the camp most is not the material they bring. It is the return itself, for days. Uncertainty occupied the spaces where these people had slept. Now familiar voices fill those spaces again. You sit near the fire while food is prepared and stories begin. The young pair describe the rocky route, the storm seen from the ridge, and the welcome offered by distant relatives. One traveller imitates a man from the southern camp who apparently spoke for a very long time before sharing useful information. Several people laugh. The story grows with each telling. Gestures become wider. A difficult crossing becomes slightly more difficult. A large animal seen at a distance becomes, by the third account, impressively determined to cause trouble. Human beings were telling stories long before writing. Cities, or permanent monuments, spoken language leaves no direct fossil. But the social coordination, tool-making, planning, and symbolic behavior visible by this period strongly suggests sophisticated communication among early Homo sapiens. Language allowed people to describe places beyond sight. It could preserve the memory of water found years earlier. It could warn children about dangerous plants. It could explain relationships between distant groups. It could transform one person's experience into knowledge shared by everyone near the fire. The travellers have brought back a map without marks. Their words carry the route. You listen closely as they describe a split tree beside a dry channel, a steep stone slope, and a spring hidden below pale cliffs. These landmarks may matter during a future drought. No object in their bundles is more useful than this information. Still, survival knowledge is not the only thing being exchanged. One visitor from the southern group produces the yellow pigment. The oldest woman grinds a small corner against stone and studies the powder. A child reaches toward it, then pulls back when several adults react at once. The visitor laughs and places one bright mark on the child's wrist. The child stares at it with wonder. People living in deep prehistory sometimes collected pigments, shells, crystals, fossils, and unusually shaped stones that offered no obvious nutritional value. Such objects may have been used for decoration, ceremony, exchange, or personal identity. Their presence reveals that human attention extended beyond immediate physical needs. A bright colour was worth noticing, a smooth shell was worth carrying, a repeated pattern was worth making. This is remarkable because nearly every practical resource demanded effort. Fuel had to be gathered, food had to be found, tools had to be shaped, yet people still invested time in objects whose purpose may have been beauty, memory, or belonging. You watch the shell ornaments pass between hands. They catch the firelight. One has a pale spiral, another carries faint purple bands. They are tiny pieces of a distant shore, brought inland through travel or exchange. Someone may wear them, someone may give them to a partner. They may identify connection with the southern people, or perhaps everyone simply agrees that they are beautiful. The explanations need not compete. Beauty can serve social life. The yellow mark on the child's wrist becomes the centre of a game. Other children ask for marks. Soon several are decorated with lines and dots. One child paints a broad streak across another's forehead, causing laughter when the result looks less ceremonial and more like an unfortunate encounter with mud. Play survives because it performs several quiet tasks. It teaches social boundaries. It builds trust. It lets children practice adult behavior. It releases tension after uncertainty. And sometimes it exists because life would be unbearable if every movement had to justify itself with calories. Evidence from prehistoric objects suggests that pattern, symmetry, and careful craftsmanship mattered to early humans. Engraved ochre pieces from southern Africa, dating to tens of thousands of years before agriculture, carry deliberate geometric lines. Whether these markings represented ownership, counting, identity, ritual, or visual pleasure remains unresolved. The important point is that someone chose to make them. A hand repeated a pattern, an eye cared whether the lines met, a mind imagined a finished form before the work was complete. You see a similar impulse after the meal. The injured hunter, now able to move his arm slightly, takes a piece of bone and begins carving shallow notches into its surface. The object does not need decoration to function. It may never become a practical tool at all. He works slowly. The children watch. One asks what it will be. He answers by hiding it in his palm. The game produces groans and laughter. Affection also persists without practical permission. The young pair who wanted to travel sit close together near the edge of the fire. Their journey did not weaken their attachment. It gave them another shared story. One removes a shell from the bundle and ties it into the other's hair. No one interrupts. Personal desire has returned, carrying something for the group. The relationship that once seemed like a possible loss has become a bridge between communities. This is how private feeling can create public value. Partnerships connect families. Friendships open roots. Affection encourages people to cross difficult ground, share food, and remain beside one another during illness. Love does not always make survival more efficient. It can create jealousy, grief, and difficult choices. Yet it also gives people reasons to protect lives beyond their own. A purely practical species might abandon the injured, avoid decorative work, and refuse to waste food on celebration. Humans did not become that species. Later in the evening, the visitors begin tapping sticks against a hollow piece of wood. The rhythm is soft and repetitive. Someone claps. A child rocks from side to side. Soon several bodies move around the fire. You cannot know whether people danced exactly this way 100,000 years ago. Movement, rhythm, and song leave almost no durable evidence. Yet music-like behavior appears in every known human culture. And coordinated sound can strengthen memory, cooperation, and emotional connection. A repeated rhythm helps many bodies act as one. It may accompany work, it may soothe infants, it may support ritual, it may simply make darkness more pleasant. Tonight, the rhythm does all of these things without needing a name. You tap your fingers against your knee. The beat is easy to follow. The oldest woman hums a low sequence of tones. Others join. The melody is simple and circular, returning again and again like footsteps along a remembered path. The fire lifts and falls. Shadows move across the stone. For a little while, nobody's thinking about reduced water, failed hunts, injured joints, or tomorrow's work. This pause does not weaken survival. It restores the people who must continue surviving. When the rhythm ends, quiet returns gently. The visitors settle near the outer edge of camp. Children sleep with faded pigment on their skin. The young pair lie beneath one hide. The carved bone rests near the injured hunter's hand. You look around at the things hardship failed to remove. A joke after fear, a shell carried across distance, a pattern scratched into bone. A hand placed tenderly in another person's hair, a story enlarged by laughter, a song rising beneath the trees. To survive, people have surrendered warmth, privacy, certainty, possessions, easy food, and freedom from obligation, but they have not surrendered wonder. They have not given up beauty merely because beauty cannot be eaten. They have not abandoned affection merely because affection creates risk. They have not stopped playing, decorating, singing, remembering, or imagining. Perhaps these things are not separate from survival at all. Perhaps they are part of what makes survival worth the cost. The fire settles into glowing coals. A shell near the ashes reflects one last point of light. You close your eyes while the returning travellers breathe nearby, and the camp feels fuller than it did before. Not because it owns more, because it remembers more, because it is connected farther, because hardship has taken many comforts, but it has not managed to take humanity. Morning comes quietly after the visitor's song. The fires settle beneath a pale layer of ash. Yellow and red pigment remains faintly visible on several sleeping faces. A shell ornament rests near the place where the young pair lie beneath one hide. The carved bone made by the injured hunter catches a thin line of dawn. For a moment, nothing moves. Then the spring begins its soft trickling again, and the camp wakes around it. You rise slowly, feeling the familiar stiffness of a body that has slept on grass and hide rather than anything designed by someone with an interest in spinal comfort. Your ankle still remembers the hidden stone that turned it days earlier, though the pain has faded into a mild ache. Nearby, the hunter tests his injured shoulder and discovers a little more movement than yesterday. These are small improvements. This world measures survival in small improvements. A wound closes, a child remembers which route is safe, a fire survives the rain, travellers return, water is found before thirst becomes dangerous. No single moment explains how humanity endured. Survival was built through thousands of ordinary decisions, repeated across generations whose names are gone. People living around 100,000 years ago had already inherited a deep history. Earlier human populations had learned to control fire, shape stone, cooperate during difficult tasks, and adapt to changing environments. Early Homo sapiens added their own refinements, carrying knowledge across landscapes and preserving it through teaching, memory, gesture, and language. They did not know they were living in prehistory. There was no awareness that cities, farms, writing, engines, or glowing screens would eventually appear. They were not waiting for civilization to begin. Their lives were complete in themselves. And yet, as you look around the waking camp, you can see foundations of the future everywhere. The toolmaker selects a dark stone brought from the southern ridge. He strikes it with controlled precision, removing a sharp flake. A child watches closely. Skill passes from one pair of hands to another. The oldest woman explains the route toward the spring to one of the visitors. She points toward distant vegetation, describes the ravine, and traces a path through dust. Knowledge moves between groups. The young pair share dried food brought from their journey. A relationship that began as personal desire now carries resources and alliances. Caregivers feed children while other adults prepare to gather. Food, effort, and responsibility circulate through the community. This is the price and power of human survival. You give up something of yourself so that something larger can continue. The idea sounds noble when expressed beside a warm modern bed. Here, it is less polished. Giving up personal desire may mean accepting the smaller piece of meat. Supporting an injured person may mean carrying extra weight under a hard sun. Preserving group harmony may mean swallowing anger when you would rather shout. Teaching children may mean watching them ruin useful material while they learn. Caring for elders may mean travelling slowly when water is uncertain. Cooperation is beautiful from a distance. Up close, it is tiring. It requires repetition, compromise, and the continued company of people whose habits may have become unbearable several seasons ago. Still, it works. That may be one of the most important truths carried from this camp into your own life. Human beings did not survive because every person was fearless, strong, wise, or generous. They survived because weakness could be supported, knowledge could be shared, and failure did not always become isolation. One person missed the animal, another found roots. One person became injured, another repaired the spear. One child gathered almost nothing. That child watched, learned, and eventually became the adult who remembered where water lay during drought. The group converted uneven ability into collective strength. Scholars continue to investigate how much cooperation distinguished Homo sapiens from other human populations. Neanderthals also cared for injured companions, controlled fire, hunted skillfully, and used pigments. The story is not a simple contest in which one species possessed humanity and another did not. Different human groups likely exchanged genes, knowledge, territory, and perhaps objects. Their relationships may have included conflict, avoidance, partnership, and intimacy. Evidence from genetics confirms that some populations met and had children together. Human survival was never a perfectly straight line. It was a braided path. Populations separated, reconnected, adapted, disappeared, and lived on within others. The people around this fire belong to only one moment within that immense movement. You walk toward the spring and wash your face. The water is cold. Pigment from last night's gathering dissolves from your wrist and spreads into a pale cloud before vanishing downstream. You think of all the things that disappear this way: voices, footprints, wooden tools, plant remedies, songs, the names of children, the jokes shared after a failed hunt. Most of human life leaves no durable trace. Archaeologists find stone flakes, burned bone, shells, pigments, hearths, and fragments of skeleton. From these, they reconstruct possibilities, but the greater part of life existed in materials too soft to survive and moments too ordinary to mark the earth permanently. A gentle touch leaves no fossil, neither does patience. The fact that these things are invisible does not make them unimportant. Perhaps they were the most important parts. One unusual lesson from ancient sites is that survival did not always produce simplicity. Even with few possessions, people created complex adhesives, selected distant raw materials, prepared pigments, decorated objects, and organized space with care. A mobile camp could contain layers of technical skill and social meaning that modern eyes might overlook. Having little did not mean knowing little. The person carrying one hide bag might understand hundreds of plants, animal behaviors, stone types, weather signs, family relationships, and routes through landscapes extending far beyond sight. You imagine placing that person in a modern city. They might be confused by an elevator. You would be confused before lunchtime in their world. Intelligence is shaped by the problems it must solve. Around the fire, breakfast is being prepared. Roots roast beneath ash. Shellfish from the spring open against heated stone. The visitors contribute dried food from the southern camp. The portions are not large. No one expects abundance to last forever. Still, there is enough today. You sit among the others and receive your share. The flavor is familiar now. Smoke, earth, salt, and a little grit. You chew slowly while morning light spreads through the trees. The sacrifices of this world surround you. There is no deep privacy, no certainty of food, no permanent shelter, no medicine capable of guaranteeing recovery, no freedom to ignore the needs of others. Yet the camp is not defined only by what it lacks. It contains warmth made through labor, safety made through vigilance, knowledge made through memory, belonging made through obligation, meaning made through stories, beauty made despite scarcity. You begin to understand that survival did not merely strip humanity down, it shaped humanity. The need to share favored attention to others. The danger of isolation strengthened social bonds. Long childhood encouraged teaching. Injury encouraged care. Uncertainty encouraged imagination. Movement encouraged memory and exchange. Scarcity encouraged restraint. None of these qualities appeared perfectly. Selfishness, conflict, fear, and exclusion also travelled with human groups. Cooperation was not automatic goodness. It was a difficult practice renewed every day. The young boy who stole meat now carries a bundle of fuel toward the fire. The woman from whom he took it accepts the wood without comment. Trust has not been restored through a single apology. It is being rebuilt through work. That too feels familiar. The camp begins preparing for another day. Some people will gather near the water, others will scout east. The visitors may return south before sunset. The oldest woman will remain with the children and continue turning the landscape into lessons. You do not know what happens tomorrow. Perhaps food will be found. Perhaps the spring will continue flowing. Perhaps another storm will come. There is no final victory waiting at the end of this morning. Survival is not something completed. It is something continued. You stand and lift a hide bag across your shoulder. It contains little, but everything inside has been chosen carefully. A stone flake, a bundle of tinder, food for the walk, a small piece of pigment given by one of the visitors. You carry necessity. You also carry colour. As the group begins moving through the grass, you look back toward the fire. Smoke rises between the trees, thin and steady. Round 100,000 years ago, humans gave up comfort, certainty, privacy, possessions, independence, and countless personal desires simply to remain alive. But they did not give up one another, and because they did not, the path beneath your feet continues far beyond this morning, through every migration, winter, drought, birth, loss, discovery, and remembered story that eventually leads to you. The path grows quieter now. You leave the camp slowly, not by walking farther into the grass, but by allowing the scene to soften around you. The spring continues beneath the stones. The fire settles into a gentle glow. Smoke rises through the branches and it becomes difficult to separate from the pale morning sky. The people remain close to one another. A child sleeps beneath a hide after waking too early. The oldest woman rests one hand against the earth. The injured hunter turns the carved bone between his fingers. Somewhere beyond the trees, footsteps move carefully toward food, water, and another uncertain day. You no longer need to follow them. The lessons remain. Warmth was never merely fire. It was the person who kept the ember alive. Food was never merely meat or roots. It was the hand that divided the portion. Home was never only a shelter. It was the familiar arrangement of bodies, tools, stories, and care. And survival was never simply refusing to die. It was learning how to continue without losing everything that made life meaningful. So let the ancient landscape fade gently now. Let the grass become still. Let the distant animals grow quiet. Let the last red light beneath the ashes dim without fear. Because someone will wake before it disappears completely. You're far from that spring, far from those stone tools and painted shells. Yet the long chain of human care has reached your room tonight. You may rest without watching the darkness. You may close your eyes without guarding the fire. The roof above you will remain. Morning will find you in warmth. And somewhere, deep within the quiet history of humanity, an old fire continues to glow, protected by hands whose names were never written, but whose choices made every peaceful night after them possible. Sweet dreams.